Smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Well, it might be if you smashed any, if you found any.
The people smash those. The smash.
And he hasn't smashed anything. I mean, literally all he does is he smashes records every sort of couple of weeks, when more and more people come in a period of 24 hours.
Smash the gangs that are running this vile trade.
You're never going to smash the gangs. That's something that basically is impossible. The gangs are like the Hydra. You cut the head off and another two grow.
So I did write to ministers and say that I wasn't convinced that smashing the gangs was the right sort of way of thinking about things.
We will smash the gangs that undermine our security.
Keir Starmer has just tweeted 15 minutes ago. He says, "I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source." Maybe I'll just read it all in his accent, shall I?
There is no return to freedom of movement. We have left the EU. I do not accept that prevents us working with other police units here, with prosecutors here, to smash the gangs.
Well, sure, the smuggling gangs are absolutely quaking in their boots now. Keir Starmer is on their case. Solving this issue, smashing the gangs, is that the impossible dream, Tom?
It really seems beyond him at the minute, I have to say.
We're going to get the evil people smugglers and we're going to smash them and we're going to put them in jail. That will solve the migrant crisis.
Prime Minister Keir Starmer's promise to smash the gangs has resulted in just 5 convictions. Hurrah for operating small boats.
So what he really wants to say is that this policy of smashing the gangs is a total and utter disaster. There isn't a cat in hell's chance that it's going to work. You just can't say it.
It's crap. That's what he's basically saying.
I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. Mark my words, I will take back control of our borders. That means cutting migration, ending the use of asylum hotels, and ramping up our efforts to...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. I'm here right through to 1 o'clock, and indeed tomorrow between 10 and 1. Sarah Pochin is going to be with us in just a second. She's the Reform UK MP for Runcorn and Helsby. She's going to do a phone-in with us for a full half an hour. If you want to talk to Sarah, if you want to ask her anything about reform, about their policies, about what they would do, about her views on any issue, you give me a ring right now, 0344 499 1000. If you've never called us before, you're very welcome to this morning. Tommy's on the phone today. What you do is you ring up 0344 499 1000, you speak to Tommy, you make your point, and then we ring you back between now and the end of the show, or indeed between now and 10:30, when Sarah Pochin will be with us for the full half an hour. So do give us a ring. There's so much to talk about this morning. The migrant on the loose. He's a sex offender and has been released in error. I'll be talking to Sarah about that. We'll take your calls about all sorts of other aspects as well. Nigel Farage has got a big press conference coming up. He's talking about the economy. We'll also hear who is the new deputy leader of the Labour Party. That could be Bridget Phillipson, but it's probably going to be Lucy Powell. We'll hear that probably in the next hour or so. That is being announced in just a few minutes' time. As I said, the number to call 0344 499 1000. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice message. You can send a voice message for Sarah as well, 0344 499 1000. You can send me a WhatsApp text message, which you can read out for Sarah as well, or you can give me a ring on that number too. Loads to discuss between now and 1 o'clock, and indeed between now and 10:30 with Sarah Pochin of Reform UK. I can see the phones going already. What that number, final time, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on Talk. Well, David Lammy is the Justice Secretary. He has been hugely embarrassed, as has the Labour government, as has the prison service, by the fact that they let out this paedophile, this person who sexually assaulted a 14-year-old. He is a migrant. He was at the Bell Hotel in Epping. This is what David Lammy has been saying about it.
Let us be clear. We inherited a collapsing prison system in which the last government was releasing
I'm sorry, we're just having a problem with that clip, but we will reset it.
And indeed,
we'll reset that clip and we will make sure you can hear from David Lammy. But first of all, let's go now to Sarah Pochin, who's the Reform UK for Runcorn and Helsby. Sarah, good morning.
Morning, Peter. Lovely to be here.
Great to have you with us for the full half an hour. Really appreciate your time. Tell us, first of all, your reaction to this migrant being released.
Well, look, it's utter incompetence, isn't it, by the system yet again failing the British people. We now have a convicted sex attacker on the streets of London, we believe, roaming free, and I would imagine it's only a matter of time before he potentially attacks another woman or young girl in London today. So I would imagine women and children in London are not feeling at all safe today. But what utter incompetence by the system. And the fact is that, yes, the government is ultimately in charge, but the failing prison service has not had the investment it's needed under the last Tory government or this government. And these sort of mistakes is this human error. These sort of mistakes happen because we've got prison officers now who are not adequately trained. There's not enough of them, and there's too much movement of prisoners. I think about 200 prisoners come in and out of this prison, on a monthly basis. Yeah. Absolutely ridiculous.
Well, there's something like 600 or 700 prisoners who are in that prison. It's not a huge prison. It's a Category B prison in Chelmsford. And as you say, there's a huge number of people. And of course, the sentencing policy is all over the place. Listen, we'll come back to that in a second, but we just see on our screens now that Lucy Powell has been named Labour's deputy leader. Your reaction, Sarah?
Well, Lucy Powell, to me, is the one. What I remember about Lucy Powell is she's the woman that accused, I can't remember which shadow minister of gaslighting, and not that old thing again when we were talking about the grooming gang scandal.
Yeah, she said that dog whistle. That dog whistle is what she said on BBC's Any Questions. That's right.
She should be utterly ashamed of herself. We've got this whole grooming gang issue at the moment where the government have been incapable of starting this inquiry. They're betraying day by day victims of these grooming gangs. And let us be in no doubt, these grooming gangs are still operating. And as for Sadiq Khan in London and his utter denial that there was ever any problem of grooming gangs in London, what do we now hear? Potentially 9,000 people on a list that need to be investigated. I mean, utter betrayal of women in London.
We can now hear what David Lammy, the Justice Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister, has been saying about this migrant. Now, this is a sex offender, convicted sex offender, who's released in error yesterday. This is what David Lammy's been saying.
Let us be clear. We inherited a collapsing prison system in which the last government was releasing people early and which our prisons were overflowing. And indeed, we have a sentencing bill in Parliament seeking to address that issue, and we have stabilised the system. But that can be no excuse for wrongly releasing an individual, a dangerous individual, into the community. And that's why Essex Police, the Metropolitan Police and the British Transport Police are conducting a manhunt tonight to find this individual and ensure that he is in custody or indeed returned to Ethiopia where he belongs.
David Lammy there, the Justice Secretary. You're with Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell, and we're with Sarah Pochin, who's going to be with us right through till 10:30. Let's take our first call from so many people have been in touch. 0344 499 1000. Jason is in the Lake District and would like to ask Sarah a question. Jason, you're very welcome to the programme. I think it's the first time you've rung us. Tell us what you'd like to say to Sarah.
Hi, Sarah. Nice to speak to you.
Hi.
I've got a big issue. I'm a Reform voter, and I've got real concerns about the lies that are being spread by the left, particularly about the indefinite leave to remain. And I'm just concerned that you're not getting your voice out where it needs to be. And there's a lot of mud that looks like it's sticking.
Jason, what do you think Sarah should be saying? What do you think Reform's message should be on indefinite leave to remain? Why are you frustrated with the process?
Well, just for instance, we've got a lovely fella over here. He's had a Turkish barbershop for 15 years. He's got 3 children in local school. And he's of the opinion that he's going to get deported. Now, he's a legitimate businessman. He's a pillar at community. He's absolutely great. But it's the lies that the left are pushing that he's really concerned, and he thinks he's going to get sent back to Turkey.
Jason, stay where you are. We'll hear what Sarah has to say, and then I promise I'll come back to you. Sarah, what would you like to say to Jason?
Well, yes, thank you, Jason. Really good question. And it is a very complicated area. Reform have made it very clear that anybody that came in, particularly in the 2021, we call it the Boris wave, when people were allowed in, and 5 years later, which is coming up, January 2026, is the time that they will get automatic leave to remain. And potentially there's up to 2 million people that applies to. And when they get automatic leave to remain, they also can bring independents, so family members. You know, we have no idea really how many people potentially could be coming into this country on the back of what we call the Boris wave. Now, these are people that have not come, for example, the Hong Kongians we will support. They are, you know, they are here, they're working, they're contributing. We're talking about people that have come in, that have gone on to benefits, that are not contributing to our country, and they can apply for British citizenship through a visa process, but they will not get this automatic leave to remain. Where has that come from? It's absolutely unacceptable, because we cannot afford it.
So,
you know, we cannot.
So Sarah, should Jason's Turkish barber friend who's been there for 15 years, should he rest easy? Should he not worry about a Reform UK government?
Look, I obviously don't know about that particular individual case, but what I would say is he needs to apply for British citizenship. If he's been here 15 years, if he's working in the community, it sounds like, you know, he's made his life here, he's contributing. If he's paying taxes and everything else, then you know, we welcome people that have got something to offer this country. The point about this policy for us is that you don't get an automatic leave to right to remain here.
Jason, what do you think of what Sarah's just said there?
I totally agree with that, and I totally agree with the policy. My issue is that the left have got it, and they're spinning the lies, and Reform allowing it to happen. Reform need to keep addressing this and keep clarifying the situation, because if not, then they're in big trouble.
Okay.
What I'll say to Jason, do you know what? Every issue we raise, it doesn't matter whether it's this indefinite leave to remain. I was in the chamber talking about the sentencing bill, which is a disaster. And again, they accuse me of getting it wrong, or, you know, she hasn't got any evidence, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Yes, I do. I was talking on a debate on asylum seekers earlier in the week in Westminster Hall. Again, the abuse we get, Jason, but we have to just keep going. And every by-election we win, and that's another voice to reform. But I think the British people can see through the likes of, I mean, what David Lammy, that clip then, just that he was saying, nobody believes what they're saying anymore. You know, he can blame the prison service and all the rest of it, but this new sentencing bill he's bringing in is a disaster.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Sarah. And Jason, thank you very much for your call. It's interesting you say that, Sarah. Kemi Badenoch, as well, the leader of the Conservatives. The Prime Minister was disappointed that a China spy case collapsed when he could have prevented it. Kemi Badenoch says he said it was horrific that 2 people were killed in the attack on a synagogue in Manchester when he's allowed carnivals of hate on our streets. Now he is appalled a migrant sex attacker has been let out of jail by mistake when he's failed to deport foreign criminals. Words, 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 weak, weak, weak. A Prime Minister with half a backbone would be taking action to control our borders and keep us safe, not standing idly by, wringing his hands. Do you agree with Kemi Badenoch, Sarah?
Well, what I would agree with is that this government has lost complete control of our borders, and that we at Reform say we are now in a state of national emergency. We have got hundreds of people coming in, they're not vetted. Do you know that we don't take their DNA? We don't take their facial biometrics. And yet, if you and I want to go into the States or into Europe now, that's being introduced. Well, it's been that way in the States for a long time, and Australia, I think. You know, and yet we're letting hundreds of people in, and we have no idea whether they are terrorists, whether they are already sex offenders, whether they have criminal records. Absolutely no idea.
Well, we have a question from Dale here, who says, from Staining, who says, what will Reform do to stabilise our prison service and stop anything like this happening again? So what you often speak on Home Affairs for Reform UK. What changes would Reform UK make, Sarah?
Look, you know what we've got to do with the prison service, and I do really understand this area. Let me just tell you this as a classic example. We have been going out to Nigeria to recruit prison officers. So we're taking in many, many Nigerians. I've got no issue with Nigerians. What I do have an issue with is that they're coming in, they can barely speak English, they're given the minimal training, and then they're put out as prison officers. This is a fact. A prison officer whistleblower told me this, that when some of these Nigerian prison officers are out now on the wings, they have cars, Peter. I mean, I've got a piece of paper here. Look, they have cars, and they, on one side, it's got whatever it says in Nigerian, and on the other side, there's the English translation. That has things like get in your cell or whatever. That is the state of our prisons. So what reform will do, for a start, is deport 10,700 prisoners that are currently foreign national offenders in our prisons. That immediately releases pressure on the prisons. The next thing we do is we have to invest in prison officers, and we have to train them properly. Whatever was wrong with using our ex-military, our military veterans, for example, to be prison officers? They understand discipline. They understand men. My dad was a sergeant major in the army. He knew how to control men, and he understood it. Let's get back to basics.
Okay, I want to go to another call. Jackie in Oldham. Jackie, go ahead. You're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say to Sarah?
Good morning, Sarah.
Hi,
as
Jackie.
a Reform member, I'm concerned that if we get into government, the establishment will throw the kitchen sink at us. They will, the blob, civil servants, I think, will be hostile to a Reform government. What are we doing to plan for this if we get into government?
Okay, Jackie, stay where you are. Sarah, go ahead.
Great question, Jackie, because so many people now do ask me this when I am giving speeches or attending rallies up and down the country. I get asked this a lot. The fact is, and I say the same thing, we are in a situation where the Tory government and the Labour government over the last 20 years has let particularly departments like the Home Office end up in a situation where the tail is wagging the dog. We are the elected politicians. We are the people that represent people like you, Jackie, who have voted for us. And so we set the policy. We know in Reform that already the establishment, the blob, whatever we want to call them, will be planning how to behave and react when Reform get into power, because we will be the next government. They know we're coming down the line, and they will be planning everything possible to manage that situation, if you like. But let's take the Home Office. You know, for the last 20 years, it's been allowed to become a self-serving institute, which doesn't put the interests of the British people first, which doesn't do what the politicians say, which finds excuses. Well, they're going to have a real shock in their hands when Reform politicians get in, because
how are you actually going to do it, Sarah? What are you actually going to do to change it?
It's about the will, Peter. It is about the will of the government.
But what practical steps are you going to take?
Well, what the fact is that you don't let the civil service tell you what they can and can't do. If we say, let's take a very emotive example, if we say anybody that sets foot on a beach in this country illegally gets immediately swept up and deported offshore, you make that happen.
Okay.
But you can only make it happen by doing things like leaving the ECHR. And we, by the time the day comes when we're in power, we will be ready, Jackie. We will have done all the preparation, the legal work to make sure that we press that button and we leave the ECHR.
Okay, Jackie, what do you think of what Sarah said there?
I think it's wonderful what Sarah said, and it's very reassuring. However, I don't have much trust in the establishment, and I fear that they might, tie Reform up.
I agree with you, Jackie. I think there'll be a bit of a fight back, certainly. And what's interesting as well, maybe I could ask Sarah this actually, is whether you feel, Sarah, because of the election to the Welsh Assembly yesterday, where Reform were kind of expected to win. They didn't win. They did very well. Their percentage points went up to a huge degree. Plaid Cymru won. Do you feel, Sarah, that there's a sort of anyone but Nigel movement happening, that the left is basically saying, look, we'll vote tactically to try to keep Reform UK out?
Undoubtedly, there was a lot of tactical voting that went on in Wales. I was there 3 days running out, 3 days throughout the campaign, I should say. I knocked on doors, talked to people. So yes, I can see that there was tactical voting, but we're going to be ready for it, because the fact is, Jackie, keep the faith, be brave, because that's what we have to do. Okay. And I guarantee it, a government that continues to defy the will of the people is a government that will fall, and that once we are in power, then it's about the will of that government to make things happen.
Okay, Sarah, thank you. Jackie, thank you. More calls for Sarah Pochin in just a few minutes. We're going to take a short break, but if you want to get your call in, use the break to pick up the phone, ask Sarah a question. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, we've got our phone in with Sarah Pochin of Reform UK. We'll go back to that in just a second, but just to let you know that Lucy Powell is the new Deputy Leader of Labour. She said the Labour Party has to give a stronger sense of purpose and in its values and beliefs. Starmer has said she's a proud defender of Labour values. Very low turnout, apparently, in this. Bridget Phillipson got about 46% of the vote. She's the Education Secretary. Lucy Powell dumped from the Cabinet in the last reshuffle. She got 54%, so hardly that much of a convincing victory. We'll do more on that a bit later in the show, but Lucy Powell is now the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. Sarah Pochin is with us. She is, of course, the Reform UK MP for Runcorn and Helsby. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Let me do a couple of quick-fire questions for you from our texters. Dan in Kent says, "Morning, Peter. Can you ask Sarah a simple question? Is Reform UK a capitalist party or a socialist one?"
Well, that's an interesting question. We represent hard-working people of Britain, and we want to keep taxes as low as possible and make growth as high as possible. And of course, you can actually borrow, if you like, some things from both of those theories of economics. But we're all about representing, as I say, hard-working people that want to get up in the morning, set their alarms and go out to work.
So are you? I mean, that sounds pretty capitalist to me. Are you a bit capitalist and a bit socialist?
Well, no, like I say, look, my belief is very simple, that you should be able to keep what you earn, that the British people should be prioritised over any other people that come here as foreign nationals. I believe that if you go out and you pay a fair rate of tax, then that is necessary. But I do not agree with overly taxing, for example, the wealthy, like Labour are going after, because what happens is they leave the country. And if we lose the top 0.01% of taxpayers, we've lost about 35% of revenue. Now, people might say that that is a capitalist argument, but the fact is it's how the country pays for itself. Okay. So, somebody would accuse me of being a capitalist for saying that. But on the other hand, I started work at 14 myself, washing up, for cash. It's about hard work.
Well, all of that sounds pretty capitalist to me. Why not just say you're a capitalist and not a socialist?
Well, are there any elements of socialism that I probably would report? I mean, anybody that needs support, for example, that has a disability, that genuinely can't work, then of course we need to make sure that we have a social security system that looks after those people. So I suppose what I'm saying is, look, I'm just talking common sense, aren't I? That's like I say, it's a bit of both.
Although interestingly, Kemi Badenoch said that Reform UK was Corbynism with a Union Jack. Is that a fair criticism?
Oh my goodness, Kemi Badenoch is that they're finished. You know what? The Tories are finished. I actually find it really frustrating that they are the official party of opposition, because people want to hear from us. Keir Starmer spent his entire conference this year talking about reform and Nigel Farage. I don't think he mentioned Kemi Badenoch once.
I think they probably talked about Reform UK a bit less at the Reform UK conference, actually, because Labour talked about it so much. Let me ask you what Barry has got in touch to say. Nigel Farage has stated that should he become Prime Minister, he will not ban halal or kosher slaughter due to cultural differences. This practice is barbaric, and I'm beginning to think that Nigel isn't a great supporter of animal welfare. He also supports hunting with dogs. Sarah, what do you think?
Oh, this is such a very difficult one. Look, the practice of how the animals are slaughtered for halal or kosher meat is basically, I think, the same. But it is to the likes of, someone like myself, it sounds pretty horrific and cruel. So it's a very, very...
So do you disagree with Nigel Farage on it?
I don't disagree. I think there's probably bigger issues that we need to be worrying about at the moment, is all I would say. Okay. And this is probably not the time, with everything else that's so highly emotive at the moment going on in the Jewish community, going on in the Muslim community. It's probably not the time to start a campaign on this actual particular issue. But clearly...
Can you do more than one thing at a time?
Oh my goodness, we're doing so many things at the time, Peter. I don't even know what day it is. I'm so busy.
Okay, let me bring in a couple more callers. Let's start with Stuart in London. Stuart, what would you like to ask Sarah Pochin?
Yeah, good morning, Sarah. Good morning, Peter.
Morning.
A bit left field, this one, but I think it's creepingly important. Would Reform do anything to look at the representation of the demographics of TV and public advertising? Because we're getting to the point now where adverts don't represent what this country looks like, and and actually positive demonisation of white people, just portrayed as criminals or inadequate when they're not portrayed anywhere else. Now, the reason why this is important, we got a case of art imitates life, because we're getting to the point where a number of my friends think that we're being discriminated like in employment markets because white men are seen as useless and whatever and just invisible. And there's one financial institution which coincidentally uses a strikingly similar image of Nigel in their advertising for an incompetent, useless, arrogant white male. I just wondered if that's something we Stuart would look into.
Okay, Stuart, stay where you are. Sarah, what do you think of what Stuart's saying? What would Reform UK do about it, if anything?
I think Stuart's absolutely right. Drives me mad when I see adverts full of black people, full of Asian people, full of, people that basically are anything.
What's wrong with that, Sarah? What's wrong with that?
Well, it doesn't reflect our society, and I feel that your average white person, average white family is like I agree with you, Stuart, not represented anymore in TV.
There are lots of white people on television, Sarah, or they're not. There are lots of white people. There are lots of white men. There are lots of white women.
We're talking about adverts, and how many times do you look at a TV advert and you think there's not a single white person on it? And actually it is. It's something that's happened because, I believe, of the woke liberality that goes on inside, this sort of like in the arty-farty world. When it comes to, northern towns like Runcorn that I represent, it's just not representative of the rest of the country. Might be fine inside the M25, but it's definitely not representative of the rest of the country. And actually, you know what, I'm hearing this more and more, people notice and people will switch off. It's like the BBC, who watches Newsnight anymore? Nobody.
Well, their ratings have gone up, actually, at Newsnight, Sarah, but it's an interesting one. Listen, thank you.
You know my point, yeah.
Stuart, quick response from you.
I just think that it's not a flippant issue. I'm not saying Sarah said it was flippant or you are, but it's a question of this is going seriously in society where white people and particularly white men are being demonised and I think discriminated against.
Okay.
I agree, and I agree it happens in the jobs market as well. I totally agree.
Very quickly, Sarah, will you reverse the VAT on independent schools? Send kids, special educational needs kids, are suffering on this, although it shouldn't be a top priority, as a tax and aspiration at a time when public services are crumbling. It seems utter madness to Hannah. What do you think, Sarah, just briefly?
Absolutely. We would reverse that. It's an absolute disgrace. And what people don't realise, this is, again, classic socialism policies where, let's attack private schools. What people don't realise is that private schools often give an awful lot of money to the local community. They let local schools use, for example, their facilities, whether it might be a tennis court or a swimming pool or whatever it might be.
Okay.
Now, through this tax, all of that's going, let alone the send issue. I totally agree with the send issue. So, yes, we would reverse that policy.
Sarah, listen, thank you. That half hour absolutely whizzed by. Really appreciate you joining us. That's Sarah Poochin, MP, the Reform MP for Runcorn and Helsby. No doubt we'll do that again with Sarah at some stage if she's willing to come on, which I hope she is. 0344 499 1000. If you didn't get your point to Sarah but you still want to make it, we're here right through to 1 o'clock. We're going to pivot now to the big story, of course, which is that paedophile on the loose. Peter Blexley is going to be in the studio in a couple of minutes giving his opinion on the absolute farce that is this paedophile. He has sexually assaulted a 14-year-old girl. He's on the loose, released by an incompetent prison service. Stay with us.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, the sex offender, the paedophile, still at large. He attacked a 14-year-old girl, an asylum seeker in the Bell Hotel in Epping. We think he's in London because he got a train to London, and the authorities don't know where he is. David Lammy is the Justice Secretary. He's in charge. This is what he says.
Let us be clear. We inherited a collapsing prison system in which the last government was releasing people early and which our prisons were overflowing. And indeed, we have a sentencing bill in Parliament seeking to address that issue, and we have stabilised the system. But that can be no excuse for wrongly releasing an individual, a dangerous individual, into the community. And that's why Essex Police, the Metropolitan Police and the British Transport Police are conducting a manhunt tonight to find this individual and ensure that he is in custody or indeed returned to Ethiopia where he belongs.
Well, I, for one, am absolutely reassured, I must say, because David Lammy has stabilised the prison system. How stable is a system that lets out a sex offender who's only served 3 months of a 1-year sentence? Peter Blexley, our crime commentator and former detective of the Metropolitan Police, is with me now. What a farce.
Absolute farce. But let's please remember that yesterday, when this news broke, it kind of overrode a very, very important story, another story about an illegal immigrant who came here on a boat and then went on to murder 27-year-old Rhiannon White, rest her soul. Deg Magic was convicted yesterday of murder. So we have a murderer come here on a dinghy. We have this Kabatu, a predatory, dangerous piece of filth, came here on a boat. We have people coming on boats, entering the illegal tobacco trade, entering the delivery trade illegally, and more. How much longer is this nonsense going to go on for? How much longer is this government going to keep putting our citizens at risk? When will it stop? And of course, as part of that, when will this man be found? Very soon, I hope.
Is sentencing policy too complex here? Is that maybe one element of this? We could just be total incompetence. It could just be, it could be corruption, for example. That's one of the elements here. But Vanessa Frick, who is former prison governor, talked it through yesterday when I was on Drive. The whole process, you're dealing with about 7 different steps before someone actually goes out. But because we have some people serving 50% of their custodial, 40% of their custodial, different elements, remand, release, is it too complicated in terms of the release of prisoners? Can errors happen for that reason? Because you've got this particular prison has about 600 people in it. About 200 people are arriving every month and 200 leaving.
And thanks to the now Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, who implemented the early prison release scheme when she was Justice Secretary, the system is even more complicated than ever. But what we do know is that even more dangerous people are being released out onto the streets of Britain. So we're letting them come in here on dinghies and we're letting them out of our prisons. Of course, many of those people let out from prisons will be British citizens, dangerous British citizens, back onto the streets to commit more crime, to create more victims, to make this country increasingly more dangerous. The country, the criminal justice system, is a mess, a complete mess. Of course, previous governments have to foot some of the blame for that as well. But in 14 months or so since this government's been in power, I don't see signs of improvement. I see things getting worse. Over 200 people have been mistakenly released from prison in the last year.
Yeah, it's 5 a week or thereabouts. It's really interesting, actually, as well, that this footage has emerged of this scumbag on the streets. I mean, holding a bag of his prison belongings and so on. He's in his tracksuit there on the streets of Chelmsford, chatting to his mates or associates anyway, just standing there in the middle of the street. I mean, he doesn't seem to think that there's anything wrong with that. He's not exactly hiding away. We now think he's got on a train to London. Just tell us what the police will be doing right now. David Lammy talked about Essex Police, he talked about the Metropolitan Police and British Transport Police.
Yeah.
Just tell us what processes will they be going through now, Peter?
Picking up the crumbs of the trail, in other words, CCTV images. If he's gotten on a train, there will undoubtedly be CCTV on that train. Let's hope it was working. There will have been CCTV at whatever station he disembarked at, and if he then goes on a bus or a tube, for example, there will be further CCTV. They will be following that trail. They will also be checking to see whether he had any devices on him. Unlikely, I would think, but would need to be established whether he has or not, because clearly if he had a mobile phone, there would be an element of trying to track that once an authority had been granted. All those kind of things. What will be important to the police is negative CCTV sightings. And some people are often surprised when I say this, but the reason I say it is, if, for example, there is a tube station that he's believed to have come out of, and cameras are checked to the left of that tube station and he's not seen there, then that tells you he's not gone down that route, so we can focus our resources elsewhere.
They can eliminate aspects of the inquiry.
Exactly, where he more likely would have gone. That kind of thing. I think the police probably have got some credible intelligence at the moment, because they've not come to the media and they've not come to the public for help. When they do, like they did with Daniel Khalifa, who escaped from Wandsworth Prison
2 years ago,
2023, when they were looking for Abdul Azidi, the man who committed a dreadful acid attack before throwing himself into the River Thames. In both those hunts, the authorities wanted the public's help, and so they used the media to get that out there. And it was, in fact, particularly with Daniel Khalifa, public sightings that led to his capture. So I'm sure at some point, if they need us, they'll be straight on the telephone to talk, and other media outlets, and getting you to push the information out there. But in the absence of any of that, I would suggest they've got some pretty credible intelligence to be going on.
Great analysis and common sense from Peter Blaxley. Imagine people wanted to hear more great analysis, common sense, maybe a few stories from your past, perhaps in some sort of theatre setting. What would you recommend they do?
I'd ask them to go to peterblaxley.com and book a ticket for my nationwide 2026 tour. Thank you.
Always good to get a plug in for the Blaxley, always worth listening to. Peter Blaxley, there, our crime commentator, former detective in the Metropolitan Police. What do you think of this absolute farce? Let me know your opinions. 0344 499 1000. Loads to talk about between now and 1 o'clock here on Talk.
Britain is broken.
Jamie, I couldn't have put it better myself. And you know what? It shows that they don't care. I think the government showed you that they don't care when they used the Home Office to overturn your ruling to say that those illegal immigrants need to get out of that hotel in Epping. And now this is just another go at the people of Epping who just want safety. They genuinely just want the basic human right of being able to walk the streets at night. And now they can't even do this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to everybody who's been in touch, including Mary in County Down, who says, Peter, why are you insisting on shoving Sarah Pochin into either a socialist or capitalist box? The whole point of Reform UK and the reason for its popularity is that it isn't stuck in the same ideological ruts as the two main parties and has a much wider appeal to an electorate that's had enough of the same parties that have wrecked the UK's economy and borders. Dawn in Chelmsford says, whoa, so Lammy is blaming the Conservatives for the failure of the prison service? What a surprise. Matthew says, David Lammy, the stupidest man in politics. That's not a rhetorical question. And Leslie says, Lammy is blaming the Tories for the migrant SKP. Doesn't he realise this happened on his watch? Well, he is a mastermind, as we know. On Sarah Pochin as well, lots of people who have been in touch. Dave says, morning Peter, you've had Ring Rob and Sarah Pochin doing half-hour phoning. When will Labour, as he puts it, put up an MP? I won't hold my breath, says Dave. Well, actually, we do possibly have a Labour MP who's coming up in the next few weeks. We'll tell you who that is before too long. We just want to get it all nailed down and make sure that that person's in the studio, but you're going to want to hear from them. Speaking of Labour, they are coming on the programme tomorrow. Wes Streeting is the Health Secretary and he's going to be on, as is Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary. So if you've thoughts on what I should ask Wes Streeting or Chris Philp, do get in touch. You can get in touch anytime between now and 1 o'clock, or indeed tomorrow morning. You know the number, 0344 499 1000. And speaking of the Labour Party, Lucy Powell is the new deputy leader. She says the party has to have a stronger sense of our purpose and our values and beliefs. Starmer has called her a proud defender of Labour values. There was quite a low turnout. It's interesting, not just Labour members, but lots of their affiliated union members as well can vote. She has an electorate of over 1 million. So the turnout was about 16%, very low. Bridget Phillipson got 46% of the vote. She's the Education Secretary and she lost, and Lucy Powell got 54% of the vote. Let's go to the debate desk now. Phil Dave is with us, the broadcaster. Phil, good morning. Great to see you. How are you doing?
Yep, good. Thanks. Hopefully you are as well.
Yes, thank you. And James Robinson is a founder of Woburn Partners. Great to see you, James. First time on the debate desk, I think. He's also a former Director of Communications for the former Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, Tom Watson. So you know all about the Deputy leadership. James, maybe I'll start with you. I know you're a friend of Lucy Powell as well. You must be very pleased that she has become Deputy Leader.
Delighted for her personally. Yeah, she is a good friend and someone who has always been actually underestimated as a politician, and I think she's demonstrated today.
Do you think Keir Starmer underestimated her when he sacked her from the cabinet?
Well, I think subsequent events would suggest that he did, because she's now been elected Deputy Leader.
Should she be back in the cabinet?
That's for the Prime Minister to decide, isn't it? I think she said that she will not go back into the cabinet because she'd like to devote all her time to being Deputy Leader. So we'll see. But what I would say is that if anyone's expecting Lucy Powell to be a sort of left-wing firebrand, they may be disappointed. What she is a Labour loyalist, and has represented the mainstream of Labour politics since she was elected back in, I think it was 2012. Obviously,
it was a by-election, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a by-election. So I think she'll be a good. She does want Starmer to succeed. We all want, on the Labour side, this government to succeed.
How's that going for you?
Yeah, well, it's early. 15. I think judge after 5 years, not 15 months.
It's interesting that, well, people are judging already, and we're seeing that Labour has done very badly, for example, in the Welsh Assembly election. I wonder what you think of, I mean, the reason a number of viewers and listeners to this programme really don't like Lucy Powell is because they really care about immigration. They really care as well about grooming gangs, rape gangs, and she said on any questions that that was a dog whistle issue. Was that her biggest political mistake, do you think?
That was a bad day for Lucy, and she regretted it and apologised immediately and has done several times since, because that's not what she believes, and I think she's been very clear on that.
Why did she say it if she didn't believe it?
I think she was caught up in the moment and was...
Doesn't that sometimes show when people are caught up in the moment, they say what they really believe?
I mean, that's normally when our deepest conscience comes into play, when it comes to what we say and what we think, when we're sort of put on the spot like that. It's certainly a concern of mine, is that sort of we now have the deputy leader of the governing party who clearly, whether it was subconsciously or consciously, doesn't really sort of take the concept of grooming gangs clearly as seriously as the rest of us do. And that's
do you think
quite
that's a fair
concern.
criticism, James?
I think that's a totally unfair criticism, and it's completely wrong. And I think you have to, when people make mistakes and say things they don't mean and regret, and then apologise for them immediately and over and over again, I think you have to accept that they are telling the truth, and she is, because she is absolutely appalled, and I know she was deeply personally regretful about that comment.
Well, she may be regretful, but the point is she said it, and unfortunately there's an awful lot of instances where people have said stuff in the past that does come back to haunt them. And my concern is that you don't say something for no reason. Now, whether it's a case of maybe since then someone goes through an element of re-education and then realises afterwards that maybe that their opinions that they used to have were somewhat misjudged, maybe that's fair enough way of looking at it, but just to apologise and then move on from it, I don't think there are that many people who've been affected.
What should she have done? I mean, she was wrong. It's not what she believed. She was she made a mistake in a very lively debate, and she apologised immediately. So I think we can leave it at that, really. I mean, that's
in the absence of Lucy Powell, I think we have to leave it there, unfortunately, because she's not here to defend herself. But I would suggest that it's quite an unusual thing to have to say on such a serious subject.
Well, listen, let's talk more about what David Lammy is dealing with, another deputy. He's the Deputy Prime Minister, so the Deputy Leader and Deputy Prime Minister are different people. James, I just wonder, this is clearly a farcical situation where you have someone who is an asylum seeker in the Bell Hotel, very, very controversial, convicted of a sexual assault of a 14-year-old. The girl was wearing her school uniform at the time when she was sexually assaulted, sent to prison, let out in error. Who's to blame here?
Well, whoever let him out is the glib answer, but it's absolutely appalling. I cannot remember a worse incident than this. Meant to be back on his way to Ethiopia as we speak. They were deporting him after he'd served a third of his sentence, because you can now deport people quicker than you previously could. Good. I mean, it just defies belief. You run out of words to express the horror and the absolute mind-boggling ineptitude of anyone allowing this person to walk out of prison, of course. So they have to, I mean, I think Keir Starmer and Lammy have both been very clear about how appalling this is, and how now we have to make sure it never happens again. And more importantly, he's got to be caught. I mean, he's still wandering around London, as far as we know.
He's on the loose, and Essex Police, the Metropolitan Police and the British Transport Police are looking for him. It's embarrassing for the government, though, too, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it is. If anything like this that happens on the government's watch is embarrassing.
I do have to say, though, actually, on that point, it's curious that people are very quick to blame the government for situations like this, and whereas much as I absolutely recognise the successive governments are hopeless when it comes to the handling of migrants who come here, as we dub, illegally, but you can't really sort of say that it is the Prime Minister or Deputy Prime Minister's fault that the authorities who were in charge and responsible for the release of this particular individual, it doesn't necessarily lie with them. It most certainly lies with the fools, for want of a better term, who did get it wrong and let him out.
Well, it could be incompetence, but it could also be corruption. We don't know if they're fools or not. They could be criminal masterminds. It's interesting, there is one officer who's been suspended. We don't know who that person is. We don't know what he or she says about this. But Phil, sorry I interrupted you.
No, it's fine. All I was going to say is what does concern me big time, though, is that if this is the handling by the authorities of those who we know who have come over here, quote unquote, illegally, and who do
they
genuinely
have come over here illegally.
No, I know, but there are sort of certain rules and regulations surrounding sort of illegal migration.
Well, if you come on a boat, you're here illegally. That is an illegal act.
But not to get too much into that for a second. My point being is that if this is how we handle people who do come over here illegally, we know that this individual poses a threat. What on earth are we facing with those who they don't keep tabs on, the ones that they don't even know about what kind of threat they pose to us? This is a chap who we know is a threat to the safety of the public, and this has been allowed to happen. So what about those who we know nothing about and are wandering free? What are they going to get up to? And it is a huge concern.
I'm going to do something I don't think I've ever done on air before, which is stand up for David Lammy. I mean, he is, I think, not a great politician. I don't think he's one of the great minds of his generation either. But nonetheless, the Conservatives did not build enough prison places. I was in the Ministry of Justice as a special advisor for 6 months. I played my role in not building enough prison places. The Conservatives always talk about how many prison places they build, but what they don't talk about is the net number of prison places. After 14 years, they had an extra 500 prison places. We needed far more than that. I know for a fact that they were at 99% capacity and did everything they could not to get to 100% capacity. I'm not saying this necessarily had anything to do with that, but when you have somewhere like Chelmsford Prison, James, where you have 600 people, 200 in, 200 out each month, there are probably going to be mistakes. And we know about 200 people a year, I think it's 205 a year, released in error. This guy is not the only one. It's not an isolated case.
Well, first, can I just commend you for your honesty, which is refreshing to hear. I think
that's why he doesn't work in politics.
That's why he's on telly. I think that, look, I know it's boring, but this is a systemic problem, as you've just identified. So the urgent need, after this guy's been caught and deported, is to ensure it doesn't happen again. That sounds glib, I know. It can only be resources. We have to find out why this happened. Was it human error? Was it, as you say, corruption? Who knows? We can't know. Or is it a case of needing more money, and yet more money in prisons and in the prison system and spent on prison staff? It's not easy, is it? We haven't got a great deal of money in this country at the moment for various reasons.
Well, we seem to have an awful lot of money to hoof around at the wrong things. But I mean, what I'd find most frustrating, as I think that a lot of people do as well, and I know that, Peter, you're not necessarily all in favour of this idea because your concern is that people would just be deported and not necessarily serve their time and their sentence. But I find it immeasurably frustrating that those who technically are our problem on British soil, we can't put them in prison because there seems to be a large capacity, or certainly a good chunk capacity, of foreign-born criminals. So if we were able to deport them, get them out of British prisons, and then potentially have the ability to increase sentencing and, more importantly, actually sentence some people for those who actually deserve to be behind bars, rather than even slapping community sentence on them, or worse still.
Does it not concern you that if this guy, for example, was sent to Ethiopia and the Ethiopian authorities said, actually, not our problem, we're going to let him out, would that not concern you that he didn't serve his time properly?
Concern me, yes, but it concerns me more that he's here.
Okay, but you've got to. These people need to be deported. They should be sent back to the country of their origin and to serve their sentence there. We can't do anything.
But what if they don't serve their sentence
there? Well, so it's not our problem. I'm sorry, but it isn't our problem.
Okay.
So we are here to protect the British people, and we need to get rid of these people as soon as they've served a third of their sentence or less. And take that. I think most people would agree with that.
We'll be back to the debate desk in just a minute. Phil Davis with us, the broadcaster, and James Robinson, who's the founder of Woburn Partners and a former director of communications to Tom Watson when he was deputy leader of the Labour Party. Loads to discuss. We're also going to talk more, of course, about the escaped prisoner. We'll make sure we get your views on all of that. 0344 499 1000.
We've been talking this morning about a new theme park which is going to be built. The Universal Studios apparently are going to build it in Bedfordshire. We've been asking many of you to give us some ideas for theme parks. Alison in South Wales says in the new theme park at 5 p.m. every day they could have the PIP parade. All the people driving their brand new Motability cars.
Instead of the water rapids, you can have a road you go down that's full of potholes in a car with bad suspension and flat tyres. I don't know why they're bothering building a theme park in this country. They're going right, no one will be able to afford to go to it anyway.
How about the Rachel Reeves ride, says Terry in Birmingham. You go round and round and vanish up your own deficit. It's the HS2 ride. It travels at high speed for 10 feet, where everyone gets off and into the replacement bus ride. Tickets are £50 if bought 5 months in advance, or £1,000 on the day.
There's a strong rumour going around that Rachel Reeves is going to have a kissing booth at this theme park. So what I'll do, mate, I'll shove a 5 in the pot and you can go in and fill your boots.
Thank you very much indeed, and very generous of you. One from G, who says fast-track entry to every ride for illegals, plus a free night stay in the Parks Hotel and free food. New theme park bumper cars will have to pay a congestion charge, and the funhouse isn't built yet, despite Angela Rayner's pledge to build houses. What about Ghost Train doesn't move because the driver's on strike? Have a good day. This is brilliant for the theme park. How about grow your own cannabis farm? Yeah, that's a good one. An Ethiopian safari park narrated by Angela Rayner. Says Gary in Durham. How about that? This sums up the Labour Party to me. The one idea they have to improve growth for the economy is to basically have a bloody big fun fair. It's the type of idea primary school children would pitch, given 10 minutes to come up with something. Well, it turns out, Matt, in Royston, that it's not even their idea. But they're now trying to claim it's their idea, even though it was actually the Tories.
They have done brilliantly on breakfast, but you know on Drive you've done brilliantly as well. Downhill slide rides surrounded by ULEZ cameras so that people are fined on exit. Love it. You could have a Birmingham-themed Whack the Rat stall. If you whack the rat, you can have your bin emptied for free. On the Labour theme park, a house of mirrors where they're all boarded up because they can't bear to look themselves in the eye.
I've got a great one for you, mate.
This is for the is this for the Universal theme park run by Labour?
Moat right around the park.
Yeah.
With loads of dinghies. Call it the channel and say anyone who can break in, all is free.
Imagine a Scouser say you can break into a theme park for free.
Hi, Jeremy. Hey, it's simple. You've got the Labour
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, this is Talk. Peter Cardwell with you right through until 1 o'clock. Thanks so much for your company. The big story today, of course, is the sex offender from the Bell Hotel, the asylum seeker who is still at large. The Metropolitan Police think he's in London. They are looking for him. They can't find him, and they want to get him back to prison and indeed send him to Nigeria. What do you think about that scandal, that absolute farce? 0344 499 1000. Lucy Powell is now the deputy leader of the Labour Party. That's just been announced this morning. We're also going to talk about a story about patients being urged to go online instead of straight to A&E departments as the NHS moves to a digital first service. What do you think of that? Rachel Reeves wants to put up the living wage. That will apparently give more than 1 million low-paid workers a pay rise. Warnings from businesses. She risks pricing jobs out of existence. And Sadiq Khan has responded to the latest rape gang scandal crisis. We're on the debate desk as well for the next few minutes. Loads to discuss. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell, send me a voice note, less than a minute please, we'll play some of those soon. 0344 499 1000. You can also send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring on that number too. Loads to discuss between now and 1 o'clock. Let's get started here on Talk. Well, David Lammy is the Deputy Prime Minister. He's also the Justice Secretary and Lord Chancellor, and he has been giving his reaction late last night to what has been happening. This sex offender who was meant to be going to a detention centre instead let out. This is what the Justice Secretary has been saying.
Let us be clear. We inherited a collapsing prison system in which the last government was releasing people early and which our prisons were overflowing. And indeed, we have a sentencing bill in Parliament seeking to address that issue, and we have stabilised the system. But that can be no excuse for wrongly releasing an individual, a dangerous individual, into the community. And that's why Essex Police, the Metropolitan Police and the British Transport Police are conducting a manhunt tonight to find this individual and ensure that he is in custody or indeed returned to Ethiopia where he belongs.
The broadcaster Phil Dave and James Robinson, who's founder of Woburn Partners and former Director of Communications to Tom Watson MP, was the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. They're both with me now on the debate desk. Phil, what do you make of what David Lammy said there?
Well, I find it slightly baffling because he talks about inheriting a broken prison system, which is fine. We know that. We have realised that the prison system is broken for a long time. But it's been over a year now that Labour have been in charge, so I don't think we can carry on too much longer blaming previous governments. But what I would say that slightly struck me more was the way that he said that we know that the previous government let prisoners out. Well, wasn't that exactly what Labour have done recently? They've let a whole load of prisoners
That's a fair point, isn't it, James?
Yeah, they have. No, I think I was surprised by that part of his statement. I think the part of his statement we'd all agree with is there's simply no excuses for this ever to happen. We've got to find out how it happened, why it happened, and make sure it never happens again. God, let's pray this guy is caught within by the time we finish this programme.
Well, let me know what you think about this. 0344 499 1000. Let's go to another couple of stories. Let's talk about going online before going to A&E. The NHS says go online instead of straight to A&E, this digital first service. Health chiefs say the changes are part of a radical reset of the health service. Hospitals will receive financial rewards for efforts to keep patients out of hospital by providing more help closer to home. I remember my local hospital in Northern Ireland saying that at least 1 or 2 people a week come into A&E with constipation. There are people who can go to their pharmacist. There are people who can not go to A&E and waiting long periods of time for care they could get from a GP or elsewhere. But similarly, people should be able to go to A&E and get the care they need. But often you hear people waiting hours and hours and hours and hours. Often they could get that care elsewhere. Do you think going online, checking up, is a good idea first, James?
I do, but I think the government needs to be very careful about its messaging on this, because I think, because if you talk about digital first, you can't let elderly and older people think they're coming second, because not all of us are a particular fay or with online.
Yeah, there's
the online world.
2 million people who don't have internet access at home.
Forget that.
There's also this online thing of a sort of slightly computer says no kind of way of saying there's a process. If you have this symptom, then this must be the case.
Yeah.
I had chest pains one day, and I rang, was it 111? 111? Yeah, not 999 anyway. I rang them, I thought, I don't need to go to a GP, I don't need to go to a walk-in clinic, I don't need to go to A&E. And the woman who wasn't a medical professional said, give me your symptoms, give the symptoms. And she said, well, I think you're having a heart attack, go to A&E immediately. And I said, I'm like 25 or whatever at the time, sadly no longer. I'm not having a heart attack. I just have a bit of chest pain.
Yeah.
What is it? And I said, I'm going to go to a walk-in clinic. And okay, that's only one example.
She was on Google.
She was on Google. But I do worry, Phil, that especially there will be people who say, oh, I don't want to bother the doctors. I don't want to go to A&E. What do you think of this?
Well, first of all, I would say that you've raised an extremely valid point, one of which that I was also going to point out is that isn't this what 111 is supposed to be for already? And actually, technically, there are more people who have access to 111 for those 2 million who are not online, if you see what I mean. It's supposed to be that 111 is an accessible service to everyone as a first line if you're unsure as to whether or not you go to A&E. So this, to me, strikes me as either the successor to that or possibly something that might just cause more confusion. But what strikes me more than anything is that I can't understand how in decades this country has never managed to find a suitable alternative or replacements to cottage hospitals. Remember those from yesteryear? You would have a small local hospital run by local medics who knew their area, who knew their ward, if you like, and I don't mean ward as in like the kind you get patients in, and as a result of it, they would know the medical history of the individual and know whether or not they needed to be referred to a large A&E.
Okay.
This is just yet another disaster waiting to happen.
Well, I think your point, what I'd say about that, my assumption is that the whole point of this is to clear the phone lines. If you get more people who can go online and use digital services, it will clear the 111 phone line for use by more people. So I think
Okay.
that was the way I interpreted it. I think that can only be a good thing.
Another story around today, Rachel Reeves preparing to give more than 1 million low-paid workers a pay rise. In the budget, we know the budget is on the 26th of next month, so almost exactly a month ago, a month tomorrow. The Times is reporting that the Chancellor is likely to confirm a rise in the national living wage of about 4% from £12.21 to £12.70. The thing I always think about a rise in the living wage is, yes, the government does employ many people in the living wage, but it's really not their problem when it goes up. Phil, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's just bluster, I'm afraid, because they can raise the living wage as much as they want to. Forcing companies to pay more money to their staff is all well and good, but if that company can't afford it, then guess what? There are job losses at the heart of it. So all that will happen is if a company can't afford to pay, say, 100 workers an increase of £2 an hour or whatever it is, and then you wind up with 20 of those staff losing their job, well then how does this help the economy at all? What actually needs to happen, and successive governments have failed to do this time and time again, is to realise that taxes are far too high in this country. We are taxed into oblivion in so many different ways. They need to look at the tax system, they need to simplify it, they need to say, actually, do you know what, maybe there is a limit as to what the British public can afford, and they also, very quickly, need to realise that they should be putting the pressure on companies that sort of don't know how they limit the amount that they charge people. There needs to be better caps in place.
James?
I agree we're overtaxed, and every time I pay my corporation tax, having now that I do run my own business, I curse Jeremy Hunt for putting it up from 20 to 25%. Very not something that I'd expect the Tories to do. I think on this it is difficult.
So you'd expect Labour to do it, though?
Not necessarily, no, but but as it happened, they didn't need to because the Tories did it instead.
Fair point.
Great, thanks very much, the Conservative Party, for your socialist policies. I think it is problematic. Obviously, we all know it's inflationary as well, potentially, if you give wage rises, force wage rises to employees. What I am more concerned about is getting people into work. There is no excuse now for not having a job. Work pays. Labour has made the work pay. Work pays, get a job. There might be other ways of incentivising companies to get young people back into work. I don't know if they could pay a less amount of national insurance, for example. That's what I want to see. All these millions of unemployed or young people back in jobs.
But you can't deny Labour's also made it very attractive for people not to work with the amount that they hoof out in benefits, right?
I don't think that Labour's changed the benefit system at all in the
maybe
last
not in
year.
this incarnation, no, but
for the last 14 years the Tories were paying very generous benefits, potentially. I mean, it's a big discussion.
It's much quicker than we have time for. I just want to get one more thing in just before we let you go, Phil and James. Sadiq Khan broke in a silence on London's rape gang scandal. The Metropolitan Police reviewing 9,000 cases. Previously, he had played it down, but a spokesman for the Mayor of London said any individuals or gangs exploiting children for sex are utterly abhorrent. Sadiq is quite clear they must face the full force of the law. Phil?
Sadiq Khan, typical, just putting himself over those victims, basically saying, no, there's nothing to look at here, it's all innocent, don't mind us.
He's changed his tune now, though.
He's changed his tune now because he realised he can't cover it up anymore. That's all it is.
I would say, I'm going to be boring here and point out that 3 years ago, Sadiq Khan asked the police regulator, which oversees all police forces, to ensure that the Met was dealing with these cases far more in a different way. So he actually called on the police to treat it differently, and they've since arrested more people. So I don't know where this.
He was playing it down recently and saying it wasn't that big a problem.
There's a quite famous confrontation with Susan Hall, who was, of course, Conservative candidate, where he basically dismissed anything that she was talking to about in the London Assembly, and accusing her in so many words of it being some sort of racially aggravated confrontation.
Let me remember that.
Let me ask, it did happen.
Yeah, okay.
James, a broader question, I suppose. Can this inquiry, the rape gangs inquiry that the government's having so many problems about this week, people calling for Jess Phillips to go, for example, can it get the confidence back? Can it get the right chairman or woman? Can it actually start dealing with this problem?
I think it can, and I think some victims have been supportive of Jess Phillips. Others have been have criticised her.
And withdrawn their support from the inquiry. Four of them
have,
and another one says they agree with them.
So we need to get beyond that, and we need an inquiry, because this is probably the biggest scandal of one of the biggest scandals of my adult life. And these women, girls, were ignored and belittled and humiliated by police and politicians for decades. So we have to get this right.
Okay, thank you both very much. James Robinson there, founder of Woburn Partners and former Director of Communications, to Labour's former Deputy Leader Tom Watson. Thank you. Phil Dave, the broadcaster, and the only man under 40 to use the word yesteryear. Thank you for both for joining us on the debate desk. We will go. We'll talk to a former prison governor in just a second, but stay with us here on Talk.
is broken.
Jamie, I couldn't have put it better myself. And you know what? It shows that they don't care. I think the government showed you that they don't care when they used the Home Office to overturn your ruling to say that those illegal immigrants need to get out of that hotel in Epping. And now this is just another go at the people of Epping who just want safety. They genuinely just want the basic human right of being able to walk the streets at night. And now they can't even do this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks everyone who's been in touch, including Nigel in Reading. He says, regarding the vote for Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, I understand from social media the turnout was 16.6% and there are about 160,000 people who voted. Does that mean there are 963,000 Labour members? It doesn't actually, Nigel, because there are about 300,000 members of the Labour Party. It is the biggest party in the country, although Reform UK overtaking it. Maybe it has actually overtaken it, I'm not sure, but certainly they have many, many, many hundreds of thousands of members, Reform UK. But no, there are lots of other people who have a vote, like union members, and often they just don't vote. So if you're a member of the GMB, for example, you have a vote in the Labour Deputy Leadership contest and they often don't vote. So it is a low turnout, definitely not denying that at all, but there are a lot of people who could vote who just don't, and perhaps don't have any interest in the Labour Party, maybe don't even have any interest in politics. Nigel says, great show, love the session with Sarah Poochin. Well, thank you, I enjoyed it too, and we're going to do that a bit more as time goes on. And yes, we do have a Labour person lined up, we're just nailing it down. And we'll do it with some Conservatives as well. Maybe even a Green Party person, that would be interesting. Daryl in Blackburn's been in touch as well and says, look how the migrant is still in prison, issue tracksuit and his belongings in a clear prison bag. That is a normal release procedure to me. That looks like they have taken him out ready for prison transportation to the detention centre to deport, and then somebody has let him go by error instead of into a G4 van for removal. Lamy is furious and the dangerous offender needs deporting, says Daryl continues. And he says, along with the Prime Minister and all the front bench, they've signed numerous letters and campaigns to keep dangerous offenders in the country, including sex offenders. Now we're meant to believe this outrage. Well, let's speak to a former prison governor, Mark Hammersley. He's a former governor at Highdown Prison in Sutton. Mark, thanks very much for joining us today. We're hearing as well that not only is this scumbag on the loose, but also there's something like 205 prisoners that this happens to every year. Just tell us about how that even begins to happen.
Yeah, morning, Peter.
Hi there.
Yes, I thought it'd be helpful to explain a little bit about the process on
yeah, please do. Yeah, definitely.
And then about deportation, really. Prisoners, when they're sentenced and you work out release dates, it's one of the most complicated processes, mathematical processes there is. When a prisoner is sentenced to a period of imprisonment, you have to work out in the prison initially their latest date of release, which is if a prisoner gets sentenced to a year, his latest date of release will be in 1 year's time. But once you've got that, you also have to work out their earliest release date, which is the date they're released if they behave. You work out an HDC date, which is an earlier tagging date, subject to certain conditions. Some prisoners, you work out a parole date for a prisoner. All have different calculations to work it out. On top of that, the majority of prisoners are not in prison for one offence. In my experience, over 3/4 of prisoners are in prison for multiple offences. And what you have to do with those is for every single offence, you have to work out the latest date of release, the earliest date of release, their HDC date, their parole date, and see which sentence goes over each other.
Because often they can be served concurrently, as they say it. So you might be sentenced for 2 or 3 different things, but it's not as if they add up. You just serve the longest sentence, essentially.
Absolutely. You've got to look at each court case to check the paperwork to see if they're to be served concurrent or consecutive. And often during a sentence, prisoners have additional charges that come up, and they have additional things and additional dates. On top of all that, within the last couple of years, there's been more changes introduced by law on changing those dates for existing prisoners than I've been in the service all my life. I just retired this year. The changes that were introduced in the last couple of years to change all those dates and backdate them to everyone in prison is more than I've ever known. So for just as I was leaving in April, they changed the rules on the HDC dates, for example.
Is it too complicated, Mark?
It's extremely complicated. It makes a maths question of how long does it take 2 men to dig 3 holes with 5 shovels easy in comparison to working out a prisoner's release dates. It's extremely complicated.
What do you think? I mean, we don't know, and I'm not asking you like what absolutely went wrong here. It could be, in theory, corruption. It could be incompetence. Well, it is incompetence of some degree, but what is most likely to have gone wrong here? Because surely this is a very high-profile prisoner. Presumably, he was very well known in the prison. We know that in Chelmsford there are about 600 prisoners. About 200 of them come in each month. About 200 leave and 200 come in. So there are an awful lot of prisoners on the move all the time.
No, absolutely. On top of all those issues with the release dates, in relation to deportation. The process of deportation in prison is equally another complicated process. Prisoners have, as I'm sure you'll be aware, different processes of appealing. Some prisoners ask to go home early and they fill lots of paperwork in and try to go home early, but many prisoners will appeal and solicitors will try to appeal and delay processes, and it goes on and on. In relation to deportation, sometimes when things are worked out in advance, prisoners are transferred to a deportation prison where they've got more experts on site and they can deal with those things. But where I've worked, it's not a deportation prison, and we have many prisoners being released considered for deportation. But because there are so many, it's often the case, and more often than not, that a prisoner and us as the staff don't find out if a prisoner's being deported or not until the last 24 hours of his release. And it's also not unusual to not find out until the actual morning of release. Now, if you think of all the processes that are involved in setting up release addresses and setting up transportation to go there, it
just sounds really complicated, and that a lot can go wrong. And if it does go wrong, for example, in the other direction, if you hold a prisoner for too long, there is a payment they get, don't they, if they're released later? Tell us about that.
Absolutely. Well, a release in error in a prison, you'd automatically think you've let a prisoner out too early. But from a prison's point of view, a release in error is letting out a prisoner too early or letting out a prisoner too late. And a prisoner is penalised and held to account if they do either. And so all the changes to legislation that have come in the last couple of years to existing prisoners has all been done really to release more prisoners earlier from their existing centres, to try to create, because there's not a space in prison for the prisoners coming in, to try to create more space. So the processes are hugely complicated to try to do that. The pressure to release early is huge. And when you come to a release date of any prisoner, let's say who might be being considered for deportation, in my experience, when you have got prisoners that are being considered for deportation, there's many more that are released without being deported than that are deported at the last minute. There certainly are deportation orders that come through, and suddenly at the last minute a prisoner thought he was being released, and no, now you've got to stay in. Now they're going to try to work on that.
It sounds so incredibly complicated, Mark, and a lot can go wrong, can't it?
Huge, absolutely. The processes are it doesn't surprise me to hit. Well, I mean, I know it doesn't surprise me that there are many releases, but the prisoner is responsible for making sure you've got the right staff in position that are trained extensively to do all this stuff. You have to spend a lot of time in advance to make sure you've got the right people to do that, and they're all trained appropriately. But it is hard. It is hard to keep up with that, and hard to keep up with legislation. On top of everything, of course, when you have...
But nonetheless, I mean, despite all that, Mark, we can all agree that this guy should not have been released, and that is really embarrassing for the prison service.
Absolutely. There's obviously an error occurred, and that will have to be looked into, absolutely, to see what happened, what went wrong, to prevent...
prevent it happening again. Mark, I know you're at Highdown. Random question. You weren't there in 2010 by any chance? You weren't the governor in 2010 at Highdown?
I wasn't. No, I think I went there about 2015 to 2025.
Okay, not to worry. No, it's just I worked on Newsnight a million years ago, and we did a programme, we did a show in High Down, and I've actually been behind bars there temporarily. They did let me out at the end of the morning. But Mark, really interesting to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. That's Mark Hammersley there, former President Governor of High Down in Sutton there. So thank you very much indeed for that. If you're released late, you can receive compensation for the wrongful detention. The amount varies in circumstances. One case resulted in £7,500 payout for 51 extra days of detention, in addition to legal costs. It's usually £650 per month for late parole releases and £50 per month for other delayed hearings. This just sounds like a really, really complicated system. Listen, there were loads of people who contacted us, tried to get on the air with Sarah Poochin. We just didn't have time for all of them. Sarah's going to come on again, and we will do it again. But for those who did want to talk to Sarah, I'd like to hear what they had to say. Laura is in Dartford and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Laura, what would you like to say?
Good morning, Peter.
Good morning.
Yes, my question for Sarah was about quangos. Over the last 20 to 30 years, quangos have grown to over 400 and have, in a lot of cases, taken over the role of government and powers away from government. So governments have become figureheads and actually quite powerless.
Yeah, and it's really interesting you mentioned that, Laura, because every government always says, oh, we're going to have a bonfire of the quangos, these organisations that are, we're going to get rid of them. And they rarely do, actually. Often they set up more of them.
Yeah, and I've just been reading today that NHS England has actually increased its numbers since the Labour government said that they were going to get rid of it.
I mean, it's going to be, it's a really interesting point. They're going to be scrapped, and yet they've increased their numbers. Very interesting points. Laura, thank you. Judy is in the West Midlands. Sorry you didn't get on with Sarah. With just too many people ring us, Judy, but we're interested to hear your point anyway. What would you like to say?
Hello, Peter.
Hi there.
I was very upset this morning to hear Sarah Poochin dismiss your concerns about halal slaughter.
I was too.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it didn't matter. Well, I think it matters very much, and it certainly matters to me. I joined Reform several months ago, but no more. I'm afraid this crosses a line for me. And
you're going to resign from Reform, are you, Judy?
No, I am going to, I will not be renewing my membership.
Okay.
I will not get my support anymore.
That's a deal breaker for you, the kosher and halal slaughter.
Totally.
Okay.
Totally.
Okay.
I have also been quite concerned about Nigel's support for fox hunting and what I consider to be virtual sports, getting your kicks out of killing animals. So, I'm afraid this really puts the tin lid on it. It's the deal breaker. So I think a lot of people will share my concerns.
Yeah, I just don't understand. Well, I know what it is, and I think it's barbaric and horrific, both halal slaughter and kosher slaughter, and it's something that I'm really not happy with. Judy, very interesting to hear from you, and interesting that phone-in influenced your decision. That's Judy in the West Midlands there. Appreciate that. An interesting one actually on the health stuff we're talking about as well. This is Benny in Belfast who says, in Northern Ireland, most hospital trusts run a phone-first service where patients are urged to call ahead so they can be directed to the most appropriate service. If it's an actual emergency, people should go to A&E, but the majority of people don't need to be there and are better dealt with in minor injury units or urgent care centres. Often they're diverted to pharmacies or to their GPs. My mum had a stroke, and as I sat overnight in the waiting room of the emergency department, it was obvious most people didn't need to be there. A lot of mental health issues, as well as people with sprained wrists and ankles who needed to be seen by a minor injuries unit the next day rather than clogging up A&E. Digital first is a good idea for non-urgent cases. A builder came in with a rash in his hands. He told me it was probably caused by a chemical cleaner he was using, but coming to the emergency department at night was easier for him than trying to get a GP's appointment, because that would eat into his working day. This is partly why emergency care is under such pressure. People need to be seen quickly and strictly triaged at the door and swiftly redirected if they have minor ailments. Thank you to this texter. He says, if you're not a British citizen and commit an offence, you should be immediately deported back to your country of origin to be sentenced. If that means, as in Iraq, that theft can range from imprisonment to the death penalty, then so be it. These people are not our problem. It's like we've become the world's dumping ground for sorting out everyone else's problems. Claire in Buckley says, listening to that statement from that liar Lammy has made my blood boil. Once again, it's not our fault we inherited a broken prison system from the Tories. Yes, they're also a poop show, but for goodness sake, this happened on Labour's watch. Take some responsibility. We're being invaded by hundreds and thousands of dodgy strangers, and our government doesn't care. Call a national emergency, close our borders and take control. It saddens and angers me thinking what the future may hold for my 17-year-old son, says Claire. Tony says, so 84% of Labour Party members wouldn't be bothered to vote for a new deputy leader. Things must be bad inside the party. Tony, as we say, they're not all Labour Party members. They're often affiliated unions as well. But it is a low turnout. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Just a suggestion from Colin to Peter Blexley. I don't know where he originates from, but he sounds like a true Cockney and should stand against Sadiq Khan. He would be the person that people of London could also relate to. That's Colin from Ashton in Makerfield. You can just imagine, Peter Blexley in the 70s channeling Jack Regan from the Sweeney going, get your trousers on, sunshine, you're nicked. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Much to everybody who has been in touch. Lucy Powell has been elected Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. I'm sure you're as excited as I am. Let's hear a little clip of what she has been saying.
We have to offer hope, to offer the big change the country's crying out for. We must give a stronger sense of our purpose, whose side we're on, and of our Labour values and beliefs. That's what I've heard loudly and clearly around the country these last few weeks. As Deputy, my job will be to bring those voices to the heart of our party. Because whilst we're doing many good things, and we just heard some of them now, people feel that this government is not being bold enough in delivering the kind of change we promised. I'll be a champion for our Labour values and boldness in everything we do.
Boldness. Labour's not being bold enough. She wants to bring hope. She wants to bring the big change that people want. Will this make any difference to Keir Starmer? What do you think? 0344 499 1000. One big thing he's dealing with at the moment is the prisoner, the sex offender who was released in error. David Lammy's the Justice Secretary. This is what he's been saying about that.
Let us be clear. We inherited a collapsing prison system in which the last government was releasing people early and which our prisons were overflowing. And indeed, we have a sentencing bill in Parliament seeking to address that issue, and we have stabilised the system. But that can be no excuse for wrongly releasing an individual, a dangerous individual, into the community. And that's why Essex Police, the Metropolitan Police and the British Transport Police are conducting a manhunt tonight to find this individual and ensure that he is in custody or indeed returned to Ethiopia where he belongs.
David Lammy there, the Justice Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister. Michelle's been in touch and says, it's okay, we do not need to hear from David Lammy ever. All he does is spout guff like he just did. He cares not for our safety. Penny in Essex says, David Lammy, mastermind idiot, the man is a disgrace. They're all totally incompetent. Each party blames one another for blames the other departed one. Being in the prison service many years ago, I went round Chelmsford Prison and it was very antiquated with a feeling of neglect, so not surprised at this. All the excuses from Lammy and his ilk, says Penny. Thank you for that. Let's speak to David Shipley now. He's a prison reform advocate and a former prisoner himself, actually, at HMP Wandsworth. David, thank you for joining us this morning. You've written an article about this for The Spectator, saying that accidental prison releases are all too common. Just explain to people who haven't had the benefit of reading that article what your point is and why they're all too common, why they happen. We're hearing something like 205 a year.
Yeah, so 262 a year.
Oh, as many as that? Okay.
Yeah, so which is effectively more than one per working day, because no one gets released from prisons over the weekend or on bank holidays. So actually, on average, the prison system is releasing one prisoner when they shouldn't release them every single day of the year. And we don't hear about the rest because they're not high profile. We've heard about Hadaj Kabatu because he's such a high profile case. And, people are saying, this must be a conspiracy. How could this happen? But actually, this is just showing us how bad the prison system is. And when David Lammy comes out and says we inherited a system in crisis, which is the line they always give at the moment, yes, they did, but it's got worse since they came in. So in the last year the Tories were in charge, 115 people were released in error. Last year, 262. So it's soaring. Something has gone wrong across the system. And it's not just one prison or one officer who let this guy go. And the ministers need to get on top of it.
Well, we've had Mark Hammersley, who's a former governor. I spoke to Vanessa Frake yesterday as well. She's a former governor too. And they both said, look, it's a complicated process calculating all this stuff. I'm not having any excuse whatsoever, but there are a number of steps that they go through. Someone at governor level signs this off. Then it goes through, as Vanessa was explaining yesterday when I was on Talk Drive, about 7 extra steps before someone is released. So there are lots of times when there should be, anyway, checks. We also have the fact that this scumbag is one of the best known prisoners, presumably, in Chelmsford Nick. And nonetheless, he's released yesterday. It's just a farce. It's a scandal.
It is. And those checks include biometrics. So you should check a prisoner's fingerprint on an electronic system before releasing them to verify that the person standing in front of you is who they say they are and who you believe they are. What I think's happened in this case is he was going to get transferred yesterday to a detention centre for deportation. So the paperwork said that he had to be taken up to reception. Somewhere in that process, someone or a number of people have got very confused and released him. And if we look at the timelines, how long it took them to raise the alarm, I suspect they didn't realise the error until the Home Office van arrived and said, oh, we're here for Hadaj Kabatu. And presumably they looked around and realised they'd released him an hour before.
Yeah.
It's just catastrophic.
So from the prisoner's point of view, we've heard it from the governor's point of view, from your point of view, when you were released, what actually happened? How did you calculate it? What did they tell you? Just talk us through the process. What did they give you when you left? What were you wearing? Were you in your uniform? Were you not? Were you in your civilian clothes? Just talk us through the whole process from your perspective.
Sure. So my case, I was at an open prison by the end of my sentence, which was very, very different. So I was wearing kind of similar clothes to this, I guess, and it was very, very anticlimactic. I handed my keys into the office and then walked across to the reception place, and I signed some paperwork. I got all my property that was in storage out, and then I was picked up and driven off. And you get a small amount of money as well, called a discharge grant. So they will have handed Hadaj Kabatu 89 quid yesterday, and we've seen video footage of him out in Chelmsford town centre a bit later, talking to people he presumably knew, still wearing his prison grey tracksuit, which is obviously what he was released in. But they would have issued him with some paperwork. They presumably thought they were releasing him at the end of his sentence. I mean, in which case he should have had a release license and all sorts of documentation, which presumably in this case hasn't been produced. So it's very hard to see how they failed so badly.
Yeah, it's fascinating because those pictures which we're about to see actually of him on the streets of Chelmsford, he had that big plastic bag as well that he was holding, apparently talking to some associates or friends anyway, and just, you know, sort of brazenly there. Maybe he thought he'd been released properly. He took a train to London, we think. I mean, this is hugely embarrassing for the prison service. Is it a matter of well, obviously there's a prison officer who's suspended as a result of this, but when there is an inquiry into this, who needs to take responsibility in your mind, David? Not just the person who let him out, obviously, but clearly there are systematic errors here.
There are, and these releases and error happen across the country every day, and that's the issue here. This is a leadership issue. Not every prison governor is a bad governor, but the leadership of the prison service as a whole is catastrophically bad. They are really unwilling to recognise their own fault. When problems get revealed, they tend to spend their time trying to hunt down the mole or the person who's spoken out rather than actually facing the problem. The culture itself is really rotten, and I think, you know, what James Timpson and what David Lammy need to do is recognise that and start sacking people. No one gets sacked in HMPPS. They get moved sideways, they get moved up, even if they've been appalling.
Always the way in the civil service, promoted beyond their competence. And then, I mean, we had, when I worked in the one particular government department, better not say which one it was, there was quite a senior civil servant who was useless, and she was promoted and sent to another department. We basically said we didn't want to work with her anymore, and she was promoted and sent to another department. Anyway, listen, thank you, David, as always. Appreciate your contribution. That's David Shipley there. He's a former prisoner at HMP Wandsworth himself and a prison reform advocate. David was on charges of fraud, by the way, in case you're interested. Mike is in Surrey and from Deepcut. Mike, you're very welcome to the programme. I understand you're a retired policeman, is that right?
Yes, Peter, good morning. I retired in 1999, and when I retired from the police, I got a job escorting kids. This is before all this circo started and things like this, and we used to have private companies used to do it. Anyway, I had to go to a young offenders institution to get a kid out who apparently was being released on sort of humanitarian grounds to be put in a mental hostel.
Yeah.
So he had mental health conditions and everything, you see. So it's fair enough. So I go there, and the boy's sitting on the bench and what have you. And then I said, "Can I check the paperwork, please?" And I look at it. It's got something like home address is Liverpool. He's lived there all his life. He's 5'6". There's a bloke there, about 6 feet tall, you know, with a London accent.
Right. Yeah. Clearly the wrong person.
This can't be the bloke.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Well, we're a new team here. We don't really. We just got told to go to last night and tell them in this room you're leaving." And I don't know if they work something out between themselves, but this bloke was serving a stretch for like robberies and burglaries and
someone who certainly shouldn't be on the streets and certainly didn't need to be in a mental health hostel either.
Yeah, I said, "Well, how can this happen?" They said, "Well, come to the office and they just tell you to release him."
Farcical, absolutely farcical. And it's still happening. I mean, that was a few years ago. It's still happening today, Mike, clearly, with this sex offender on the streets of London.
Yeah. But the thing was as well, on his thing, it had a photograph of this bloke. It was him. But the person wasn't the person in the blinking file.
It's just such incompetence there, Mike. It must have been really frustrating for you as well.
Computers and things like this, but absolutely astounded. The blinking, they had to send for the duty officer, whoever it was, and it is, I tell you what, you could cut the air with a knife with a language and
right.
Things like
Yeah. Mike, thanks for telling us about that. Really interesting that these things just keep happening, and we know from David Shipley there, 262 people a year apparently released in error. Lots of people getting in touch about all sorts of issues, including this one. Thank you to Barry, who says, Sarah Pochin mentioned about ex-military personnel working in prisons, but I think that's the last place many of them would want to be after a lengthy service. You can't export military discipline into the prison system or Civvy Street, for that matter. It's a totally different world. Barry, I mean, maybe you were a serving officer or soldier, and I'm sorry if this is patronising, but I actually think there are a lot of skills that the military have that could be in the police or prison service, that kind of discipline, the dealing with difficult situations. I think there are loads of people who leave the military who should be encouraged to go into those. Okay, yeah, it's a different job. There are some different skills, of course, but I think there are transferable ones. I'd be really interested to hear from people what they think about that. 0344 499 1000. Peter, another Peter from Lancashire. What should the Labour Party do is fix the potholes and stop the boats. That'll be a good start after 16 months of inactivity. And another person says, I've watched the show all morning, and one comment I have based on the majority of people can be summed up as no such word as can't, just don't want to. From top to bottom, we do anything if we want to. Tim, that's a really, really good point. They brought Parliament back on a Saturday to save British steel. I'm not saying they shouldn't have done that, but if they want to solve these problems, they can. Labour have a massive majority. They can do basically what they want. Okay, some problems when it came to the welfare bill that they couldn't get through, but usually if they really, really, really want to solve a problem, they can. I'll take a few more calls after the break. Going to break now, but just before I do, Stephen Millings in Belfast has been in touch. Says, oh my goodness, Peter, the Sweeney, you're far too young. Used to be one of my favourite shows. I saw a repeat recently. It's so politically incorrect. Just wonderful. Stephen, one thing I will never tell you to do is shut it, sunshine. Stay with us here on Talk.
Derby Council, Derby City Council, but eagle-eyed, said, well, you look like you're probably a middle-aged guy. You know, you're balding and you're grey hair and you're smoking, your deep voice, stubble. Well, he said, no, I am a child. So he's appealed to the courts. This appeal, as decided by Judge Gaynor Bruce of the Upper Tribunal of the Immigration and Asylum Chamber, has agreed that this bloke is a child.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is talk.
Thank you to Steve in London, who says, I see Lucy Powell has said Starmer must be softer on immigration. They don't get it, do they? I can't understand why they don't get it. Leslie says, if prisoners are released early, they're meant to be tagged. Why wasn't this man tagged? Maybe he was, and maybe they can't find him even if he was. James says, people complain about halal meat in the UK. They're misinformed. I hate the idea. I would never eat it. But the animals are stunned in exactly the same way as non-halal slaughtered animals. It's the only means of slaughter that's different. They don't suffer, says James. Nicola says, my concern is that the new sentencing rules that Sarah debated in government, will these new rules come into place when the rape gangs are in court? If so, looking at the new rules, no one will be jailed. I may be thinking too hard on this, but why bring in this when so many grooming gangs hopefully will be investigated? Wonderful show, says Nicola. Thank you. Appreciate that. Barbara's been in touch from London. She says she's 77 years old. Appreciate that. Morning, Peter. I totally agree with your caller Judy regarding the halal slaughter issue. I'm a vegetarian, vegan, and became one over 40 years ago due to the horrific procedures like factory farming, etc. I do not believe in any slaughter of animals for us to eat, and particularly the barbaric way letting animals bleed to death without sedation. I'm a Reform supporter, but this issue may have changed my mind. And Steve says, the lady not renewing her Reform membership because of views on halal slaughter, does she think any of the other parties would ban it? I just don't buy it. Well, she sounded pretty genuine to me. Another person says, if the public were told this scumbag was going to be deported, maybe the person who realised who he was, filmed him on the street, may have contacted the police and kept their eye on him. Why do we only get some of the info? Well, this is the problem of journalism and the problem of covering these stories. You never get absolutely the full story. We never know exactly what the politicians say. We will no doubt get more information about the Ethiopian migrant who is a sex offender, I'm sure, as time goes on. Hopefully they will catch him very, very soon. Let's talk now to Matt in Cheshire about Lucy Powell. She is the deputy leader of the Labour Party. She's just been elected today. Matt, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi, good morning, Peter.
Morning, hi.
She's the MP for Central Manchester, and under her reign, I think, which more or less parallels with Andy Burnham's reign, Manchester's turned into a hellhole. There are murders now, drugs all over the street, and it's almost like a retrograde step from Angela Rayner, who was also a sanctimonious loudmouth. But Lucy Powell's even worse than Angela Rayner. At least Angela Rayner had a personality and a sense of humour. I saw Lucy Powell conduct, when she was the leader of the House, I don't know what the actual...
They generally do leaders' questions. Would it be that? Sort of like PMQ? So on the Thursday they do leaders' questions, or Leader of the House of Commons, and if you don't get your question at PMQs, often people ask the Leader of the House.
Well, if you contrast that to when Penny Mordaunt used to do it, it was chalk and cheese. I mean, Penny Mordaunt was combative, but it was always entertaining, and it was usually a brilliant debate between her and Labour. Under Lucy Powell, it just became like it was just droll and boring. And if Labour think this is in some way helpful to them, again, you've made yet another mistake. Your guest earlier said she's not a socialist or a left-winger. She's the epitome of a metropolitan socialist, like Richard Bergen, like Jeremy Corbyn, like Rebecca Long-Bailey.
Do you think Lucy Powell has the same views as someone like Richard Bergen? Would she have been in the cabinet if she had? I'm not sure I agree with that, man.
If you watch back a few years ago, Peter, all these people sat together on the back benches, all of them, Rayner, Long-Bailey, Nandy, John McDonnell. They all think they own the North. They've all got the same views. Ian Lavery as well, from the North East.
Yeah, former chairman of the Labour Party under Corbyn as well. Okay.
Yeah, of course. Honestly, Peter, there's nothing different about any of them.
Okay.
It's fake centrism.
Matt, thanks for your thoughts. That's Matt in Cheshire. I want to play a few voice notes now. Keep them coming in, 0344 499 1000. Ashley wants to talk about the migrant on the run.
You have to ask the question. It's not about money, is it? It shouldn't be one person making the decision to release it, from what I understand from your programme. Yesterday, there are multiple processes to go through to release someone, from checking them from checking the paperwork and getting sign-off and then getting final sign-off before they're released. They seem to have suspended one single person, which you have to ask, how can one single person be responsible for this absolute screw-up? It smells of something, and whether it's mistakes all round, there needs to be more than action taken against one individual. This has to be multiple.
Very interesting voice note as always, Ashley. Thank you. Mark's been in touch on halal meat.
I fail to see why the left are having kittens about the banning of halal and kosher slaughter, because I remember a time when they were all very sort of hippie and very in favour of the welfare of animals above everything else. And also, they're trying to stop us all from eating meat. They want us all to eat crickets and eat less meat because of net zero, because of methane from cows and all the rest of it. So, you know, this is just one more step along the path to the general population to eat less meat. So ban halal slaughter, ban kosher slaughter, and then look at the rest of us eating less meat as well, which I already do.
Mark, I'm not. I don't agree with you on that. To be honest, I don't think this is a plot to make us eat less meat necessarily. I just think there are two aspects of both the Jewish and Muslim faith that are barbaric. I just think, look, slaughtering animals is not a nice process. Of course, it's not. It's killing an animal. I'm a meat eater. Maybe I'm a hypocrite. I don't think it's the left either necessarily. I mean, Judy was telling us she's a Reform UK member. I'm not sure she would describe herself necessarily as a left-winger, although, as Mary in County Down pointed out earlier on, these labels, and are you a capitalist or a socialist or whatever, do they have any meaning anymore, which I think is another aspect. Let's hear David's thoughts on the NHS now.
I called 111 on Sunday night because my ankle was swollen up and I've got a flight in a few days, a long flight. Went through the assessment online, got made an appointment an hour later in hospital. I turned up, saw the doctor, and she said I should see my GP. Following day, I saw my GP. He said, I don't think it's a DVT, but you need to get checked. Sent me to another hospital. I had a scan. My ankle, my calf has been swollen for 2 weeks now. They did the scan. They said, no blood clot, you're good to go. Then it turns out it's one of the medications that I've been on for years that's caused my ankle and calf to swell. And if you look on the reviews on it, it's famous for it. They could have saved a lot of time and energy just by looking at that instead of just ignoring it.
Yeah, David, I think some people have great NHS care. Some of people are sent around the houses, as it sounds as if you have been. Thank you to Martin in Cornwall. He says, I know it's often said these days, but Britain is broken. Daily we get examples of this. Public services are crumbling, the cost of living is suffocating families, and trust in leadership is on an all-time low. We need accountability, vision and urgent action, and not more empty promises. We, the people, deserve better. Is anyone in power truly listening to the voices on the ground? Keep up the great work, says Martin in Cornwall. Really appreciate that, Martin. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to talk more about this escaped prisoner. David Spencer's head of crime and justice at Policy Exchange. He'll be with us in a few minutes here on Talk. Stay with us.
We've been talking this morning about a new theme park which is going to be built. The Universal Studios apparently are going to build it in Bedfordshire. We've been asking many of you to give us some ideas for theme parks. Alison in South Wales says in the new theme park at 5 p.m. every day they could have the PIP parade. All the people driving their brand new Motability cars.
Instead of the water rapids, you can have a road you go down that's full of potholes in a car with bad suspension and flat tyres. I don't know why they're bothering building a theme park in this country. They're going right, no one will be able to afford to go to it anyway.
How about the Rachel Reeves ride, says Terry in Birmingham. You go round and round and vanish up your own deficit. It's the HS2 ride. It travels at high speed for 10 feet, where everyone gets off and into the replacement bus ride. Tickets are £50 if bought 5 months in advance, or £1,000 on the day.
There's a strong rumour going round that Rachel Reeves is going to have a kissing booth at this theme park. So what I do, mate, I shove a £5 in a pot and you can go and fill your boots.
Thank you very much indeed, and very generous of you. One from G, who says fast-track entry to every ride for illegals, plus a free night stay in the park's hotel and free food. New theme park bumper cars will have to pay a congestion charge, and the funhouse isn't built yet, despite Angela Rayner's pledge to build houses. What about Ghost Train doesn't move because the driver's on strike? Have a good day. This is brilliant for the theme park. How about grow your own cannabis farm? Yeah, that's a good one. An Ethiopian safari park, narrated by Angela Rayner. Says Gary in Durham. How about that? This sums up the Labour Party to me. The one idea they have to improve growth for the economy is to basically have a bloody big fun fair. It's the type of idea primary school children would pitch, given 10 minutes to come up with something. Well, it turns out, Matt, in Royston, that it's not even their idea. But they're now trying to claim it's their idea, even though it was actually the Tories.
They have done brilliantly on breakfast, but you know on Drive you've done brilliantly as well. Downhill slide rides surrounded by ULEZ cameras so that people are fined on exit. Love it. You could have a Birmingham-themed Whack the Rat stall. If you whack the rat, you can have your bin emptied for free. On the Labour theme park, a house of mirrors where they're all boarded up because they can't bear to look themselves in the eye.
I've got a great one for you, mate.
This is for the is this for the Universal theme park run by Labour?
Moat right around the park.
Yeah.
With loads of dinghies. Call it the channel and say anyone who can break in, all is free.
Imagine a Scouse to say you can break into a theme park for free.
Hi, Jeremy. Hey, it's simple. You've got the Labour ghost train.
Yeah.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, this is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. It's just gone 12 o'clock and I'm here right through until 1 o'clock today and tomorrow 10 until 1. Loads to discuss, especially about the manhunt for the prisoner, the asylum seeker who was at the Bell Hotel. He then sexually assaulted a 14-year-old girl in her school uniform. He was convicted, sent to prison, about to be deported as well to Ethiopia, and then that didn't happen. Why? Because he was let out. He's on the loose, originally in Chelmsford, now in London, authorities say. Where he is, they don't know. Lots to discuss here on Talk between 1 on that and lots of other issues as well. Lots of people want to talk about migration more generally, prisons more generally as well. What Sarah Pochin said earlier on, the Reform UK leader of the NHS. There's loads to discuss. 0344 499 1000. That's the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word Talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note, less than a minute please, on the main number 0344 499 1000, and that main number can be used to send WhatsApp text messages and to give me a ring as well. Loads to discuss between now and 1 o'clock here on Talk. Stay with us. Well, David Lammy is the Justice Secretary. Late last night he said this.
Let us be clear. We inherited a collapsing prison system in which the last government was releasing people early and which our prisons were overflowing. And indeed, we have a sentencing bill in Parliament seeking to address that issue, and we have stabilised the system. But that can be no excuse for wrongly releasing an individual, a dangerous individual, into the community. And that's why Essex Police, the Metropolitan Police and the British Transport Police are conducting a manhunt tonight to find this individual and ensure that he is in custody or indeed returned to Ethiopia where he belongs.
David Lammy there, the Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary. Well, we will be holding the government to account on this. Is it their fault? Is it the prison service? Is it the individual prison officer who has been suspended? We don't know exactly what has happened. We do know it's been a catastrophic screw-up. Tomorrow on Talk between 10 and 1, I'll be talking to not just the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting. He is joining us tomorrow, but also Chris Philp, who is the Shadow Home Secretary. So if you've questions you think I should ask either of them, either the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, or the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, both of them joining me tomorrow on my Sunday show between 10 and 1. Plenty to discuss then, but all sorts of issues. Let's hope this scumbag is back where he belongs, behind bars, this time tomorrow, and even, you know, as soon as possible. Hopefully by the end of the show in the next hour we will see what has happened with all of that. Let's speak to David Spencer now. He's Head of Crime and Justice at the Policy Exchange, one of the big think tanks in London. David knows of what he speaks. David, what a complete fiasco. What on earth should have happened and didn't, do you think?
Good afternoon, Peter. You're right. A fiasco is absolutely the right word for this. It is a shocking failure of operational security by the prison service. Policy Exchange earlier this year described the prison service as being in complete crisis. And one of the things that we called for was a complete clear out of the most senior levels of the prison service. And it is this sort of thing that explains why that is necessary. I understand that a pretty junior prison officer has been relieved of their duties as a result of this, but that's just not good enough. The idea that this is all down to one errant prison officer is an absolute nonsense. And we know that from the data, because the Ministry of Justice publishes every year the number of prisoners that they manage to release in error. Remarkable that there are so many of them that they actually have a data set that they publish every year on this. But what we've seen in the last year is that the number of prisoners that are released in error has doubled since the year before. So this year, the financial year to the end of March 2025, they released in error 262 prisoners. And that is just astounding to me. So that's just not one or two mistaken junior prison officers.
And they've paid out money.
At the very top.
Yeah, and they've paid out money to people who've been kept too long as well. In some cases, thousands of pounds in compensation to people who've been kept in prison too long. So they're getting that side of it wrong as well. They're releasing people too early. Is the policy around this too complex? Because we've seen that Labour have introduced, for example, that you serve 40% of your sentence behind bars, 60% in the community, as it's called, essentially on probation, on parole. Tell us whether you think the sentencing policy is just too complicated. Are there too many calculations that these prison officers need to do? Because it's not just this guy who, I mean, that's a catastrophic screw-up, but hundreds of others.
Yeah, I'm not convinced this is about the complexity of the policy, albeit I think the idea of early release for any prisoners, or certainly the vast majority of prisoners, which happens at the moment, is ridiculous. I think that when the public hear that someone has been convicted and sentenced to a certain term in prison, they expect that those criminals should be spending that time behind bars, not being released after a third or 40% of the sentence. So I think the entire nature of the sentencing system in this country is actually based upon built on lies, frankly. When someone is sentenced to, let's say, 12 months in prison, that person should be spending 12 months in prison. But I think this case is an example all the way through of why the criminal justice system is in such trouble. First of all, this person was not supposed to be in the country in the first place. They then commit a sexual offence. They then get sent to prison for a mere 12 months, which frankly is clown-like in my view, given the seriousness of this offence. He's then released incredibly early. He's then due to be deported incredibly early in his sentence. We then managed to release him entirely, and he's still on the run. Like this case is just an example of the criminal justice system end to end completely failing the public. And what we will no doubt see, or what I would expect we will see, is an urgent question to ministers on Monday morning. I'd be surprised if we don't see that. We certainly should see it. My hope is that this individual will be back in custody by then. But what we need to hear from ministers is, number one, how this happened, and number two, who's going to take the fall for this? Because it absolutely should not be some junior prison officer. This should go right to the very top. And one of the things that I expect we'll hear, and I'll be very disappointed if we do hear it, is that, don't worry, there'll be a review. There'll be a review about all of this, and we'll work it all out. Well, yeah. I have very little faith in reviews announced by government, and the reason for that is that we are still waiting for the publication of the review into the escape by Daniel Khalif in 2023. Now, he was on bail. He was on remand awaiting trial, managed to escape from HMP Wandsworth. Like, that was 2 years ago. We're still waiting to hear. He was in the interim convicted of espionage and terrorism offences. So, this is a ridiculous set of circumstances that we've now got a sexual offender that's on the run. 2 years ago, we were allowing suspected terrorists and spies, essentially, to be released from prison. Like, what on earth is going on? And when we look at the most senior levels of the prison service or the Ministry of Justice, which is the owning department of the prison service. Now, what have we seen at the most senior levels? Well, the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Justice, not that long ago, was promoted to a much bigger department, and the Director General of the prison service has left the prison service, but has got a nice new job elsewhere in government. Like, there is simply insufficient accountability for failure within the system, and the prison service is an absolute exemplar of that taking place.
I wonder what you think of what Gary has sent in on WhatsApp. He says Labour claim they inherited the problems in the prison system from the last government, but can I point out that when in opposition they blocked or tried to block the building of extra prison capacity? For example, my local Labour MP Stephen Kinnock was a very vocal supporter of the campaign by NIMBYs in Port Talbot against the building of 1,500 capacity super prison there that led to the cancellation of the project in 2018. Something that was publicly celebrated by Mr Kinnock. You can't behave like that in opposition and then take no responsibility for the consequences when you are in government. What do you make of that, David?
There's simply no excuse for governments not building sufficient prison places. And, we have heard that the government is planning to build an increase in prison capacity, but it is just going to take too long. And I have taken some time to be persuaded, but I'm absolutely convinced that we now need to be seeing just a lot more rapid deployment cells to increase their capacity at speed in the prison system. Like, we cannot be waiting and waiting for very large building projects to be completed. We need to look at other alternatives, and frankly part of that is making sure we deport the right people that should be kicked out of the country in the first place.
David, thank you. That's David Spencer there, Head of Crime and Justice at Policy Exchange, one of the big think tanks in London. Herbie in Harrow is on the line. He's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Herbie, what would you like to say? You're very welcome this morning.
Well, good afternoon, Peter. Well, what I'd like to say is that I think it's time to call a state of emergency now. We've had 3 incidences in one day, Peter, and this can't go on. It's bringing us down to a level where we're not safe to walk the streets anymore. We don't know who's coming into the country. We've got no idea what their past history's been like. We can now see, when it comes to light, what these people are really like. We've got to stop this madness. We've got to do it straight away.
I think a lot of people will agree with you, Herbie. Has the government got any grip, especially on the prison service, do you think?
No, Peter, they haven't got a clue what to do. It's crisis after crisis after crisis. To me, I think that what happened last night proves that privatisation doesn't work, because they're not employing the right people to take care of the systems that are in place. And I'm sorry, Peter, it's got to stop. We've got to say, right, that's it, enough's enough. Let's bring the barriers down now and let's start to put the country right again. We've got to do something before it's gone completely.
Herbie, thanks for your thoughts there. That's Herbie in Harrow there. And Ian says, remember the life of Brian Scene? If Christians getting to the prison gate being asked crucifixion or freedom, and one joke's freedom, but says not really crucifixion. Is this what's happened here? Deportation or freedom? He chose freedom. Dean and Mandy say, I think the police should take a look at the food delivery companies. He's probably working for one of them. Great show. Debbie says, why was the Ethiopian bloke sent to the Nick and not just sent to the detention centre? Because he's only been there a few weeks. What a waste of our money. Leslie says, great show, Peter, especially the debate with Sarah Pochin. Can't wait for some Labour MPs to be held to account by you. I may even ring in. Leslie, you text in fairly often and you always speak sense, and I'm very happy to read them out, but it would be great to speak to you in person. The great news for you is that Mike Tapp, who is the Migration and Citizenship Minister, is going to do one of these phone-ins with us one Saturday. Mike's been, of course, in the studio a number of times. He's since been promoted to the Home Office as Minister there, and he is going to do one of the phone-ins with us. So, Leslie, perhaps we will hear your voice at long last. Another person says, I thought this government was releasing prisoners even earlier now. Peter says, I'm a reform-supporting vegan. Wanting them to ban halal and kosher slaughter is nothing to do with politics. Another person says, if they didn't deport millions of extra people, we wouldn't have a crumbling NHS. All routes lead to migration. Lizzie in Birmingham says, halal is barbaric. I ask now if it's halal. I really don't care. I really don't care how that makes me look, and if I go for Indian, I order vegetarian. Chris in Lancaster. Loads of people getting in touch about halal food. On halal, I once read that there is too much halal produced and they sell in excess in the general market. I think all meat should be labelled halal or certified non-halal. so we can have a choice if the majority of the UK we support humane slaughter methods. On politics as well, John and Sutton, another person who rang in earlier. I'm sorry, John, you didn't get on with Sarah Pochin. It was really, really busy half an hour, but we are interested in what you have to say. So maybe it's a bit of a consolation prize, but tell me what you think anyway, John. You're very welcome to the programme this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Peter. Oh, crikey, hang on, let that go past.
That's okay.
What I wanted, you're just as good, I would imagine. What I wanted to say, what I wanted to ask Sarah was, you know, next May's election in Wales.
Yeah.
They are changing the system from first past the post to proportional representation.
Uh-huh.
And what I wanted to know is, how do you think that would affect reform? Do you think that they'll get
I think it's going to help reform. Actually, I think it's going to help reform an awful lot, because a PR system is a bit fairer, and actually it's weird because if you look at reform, John, and you look at, apologies for getting a bit cone-headed and technical here, but if you look at the number of votes that reform got at the Westminster election, they got 4.1 million votes last, well, not last July, but the July beforehand. They got 4.1 million votes, but they only got 5 MPs elected. The Liberal Democrats, who are really, really good at understanding where are we going to get the votes, how are we going to distribute them, where are we going to put our boots on the ground, are we going to put, you know, more campaign workers in that constituency or not? They got far fewer, 600,000 fewer. They got 3.5 million, and they got 72 MPs. But if it was a proportional system, well then Reform UK would have many, many more MPs than the Liberal Democrats. So I think it's going to help them in Wales.
So, going by what they got, about 36% of the vote, yeah? So, if that's repeated come next May, roughly, it goes by party, doesn't it? People vote by party. They go for
Well, you can vote for candidates in a PR election, and what usually happens is it's in a constituency. So the constituencies, like where I come from in Northern Ireland, for example, in each constituency we have 5 members of the Assembly in Northern Ireland, and roughly, it's a complicated system, but roughly it's proportionate to how many people vote. So in theory, Reform UK, based on yesterday's result, would get about 1/3 of the members of the Welsh Assembly. Now, that may not exactly work out because it's different in different constituencies, but I'd be really surprised if Reform UK are not a big voice in Wales after the next election on the current polling, John.
Right, that's what I wanted to... Thanks for explaining that to us.
No worries at all. Anytime, John. Listen, thanks for your call. Really appreciate it. That was John in Sutton there. Aubrey in Upminster says, when Reform announced that they would backdate the removal of indefinite leave to remain, this was slammed as racist and morally unacceptable by the Labour government. The same Labour government, however, backdated some legislation for the extra early release of prisoners. So is backdating legislation morally acceptable for Labour, but morally unacceptable for Reform? Another example of two-tier Britain. That is a really, really good point, Aubrey, and it is one that I had not connected, so thank you for that. Dave says, oh my goodness, when are Labour going to stop blaming everyone and everything else and accept responsibility for things they are doing wrong? I look forward not to the budget when Rachel from Accounts blames the Great Fire of London for the pending tax increases. That's a very, I don't think she's going to blame the Great Fire of London, but that would be a monumental mistake. Sean in Bridlington says, the left keeps saying Reform wants a health system like the USA. I don't hear Reform refuting this anywhere nearly enough. It's interesting, Sean, I think it was at Prime Minister's Questions, Nigel Farage did refute that previously by saying, look, that is not what Reform UK want, and it is a misrepresentation. They are interested in how private healthcare works with the NHS, but there's loads of privatisation in the NHS. There's loads of private healthcare in the NHS, and that's often how people get their operations more quickly. Don in Chelmsford says Starmer and his hapless government are destroying the country. My fear is that we are beyond the tipping point. Who will save us, says Don. Lots more to discuss. We'll take more of your calls, texts, tweets and voice notes. 0344 499 1000. Loads to discuss after the break here on Talk.
Nigel is very popular in actual fact. There are more people supporting reform now than there are supporting Labour or the Conservatives. He is exceptionally popular. We have in Keir Starmer the most unpopular Prime Minister since records began, since opinion polling started. This is the most unpopular Prime Minister, and there's a good reason for that. He's incompetent, he's not capable. People have seen in just less than 18 months how bad he is at being Prime Minister.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Joe's been in touch on Twitter and says the message you read out earlier is wrong, stating a UK halal is pre-stunned. I can assure you it is not. A friend is a local butcher, a successful catering supplier. He has to inspect abattoirs each year with major clients, and what he witnessed is horrific and cruel. Gosh, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. Lucy Powell, says this person, is an amazing northern lady that talks sense. Welcome aboard, Lucy. She will keep Starmer in check and make sure Labour doesn't get thrown off course. Jackie says, can you ask Wes Streeting tomorrow, we're talking to Wes Streeting, Health Secretary, tomorrow morning, why, when record investment has gone into the NHS, are they asking for redundancies and imposing austerity on the wards? I have direct evidence of this. Where is the money going? Maddie says, I don't believe your caller earlier when she said she would leave Reform UK because Sarah Pochin said banning halal slaughter wasn't their top priority at the moment. Labelling would be a priority for me. What other political party had this in their agenda? Well, the caller didn't say it was the top priority of Reform UK, or even that it should be the top priority for Reform UK, but she said it was a priority for her, and she said she's not going to renew her membership. I've no reason to disbelieve her, and look, people feel very, very strongly about a lot of these issues, including issues of animal rights, so I've no reason to disbelieve that caller. Darren says, seriously, I thought you were knowledgeable. Lucy Powell is a centrist politician. I mean, she is, in the sense of the Labour Party anyway. She's not really on the left in the way that Richard Bergen is. So, Darren, I'm not quite sure what you're talking about there. But anyway, thank you to Sarah in Morden, who says reforms policy should include withdrawing from every international convention that overrules our sovereignty immediately, setting up migrant camps on a cold remote island, voiding every single unresolved asylum claim, then giving the claimant the choice, go home or live in that island camp forever, then do the same with any immigrant who's broken the law. I've lost any compassion I had for these people, except the women and children. We've only had a taste of what they suffer in countries these monsters come from. Nick Moore in Loughborough says, good morning, Peter. I'm unable to phone currently, but as an avid Reform fan, you should have asked Sarah earlier, you wanted me to ask Sarah how they would pass the necessary legislation for the changes needed without sizeable support from the Lords. That is a really good point, Nick. We usually get a voice note from you on a weekend. Sorry not to have one this weekend, but listen, the next time I speak to a Reform politician, I'll bear that in mind. And actually, the Lords is a big issue, and Reform UK are very clear. They think they should have far more, well, they don't have any members of the House of Lords, I think, at the moment that are actually Reform sitting ones. They have some who support them on some issues, but yeah, it's an issue, and I will certainly bear that in mind the next time. Andy is in Merseyside and wants to talk about Reform UK. Andy's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. You can too before 1 o'clock. Andy, what would you like to say?
Hi, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Peter, enjoy your show.
Thank you.
I enjoy your show, and I enjoy some of the recent interviews you've had with various people. But what I want to know, as somebody who's very concerned about what's going to happen if and when Reform get in, we're fully expecting Reform, if you look at the polling, to form the next government in 2029, maybe even beforehand. However, what I think needs to be done now, and preparations need to be made, and there needs to be some sort of dialogue between Reform and the civil service, because I believe that if Reform get in, my prediction is it will be a one-term government, because what will happen is they'll get absolutely zero cooperation, which will in turn dissatisfy members of the public, and then get them out within one term.
I think that's certainly a very reasonable prediction, because I do think that a lot of the establishment will push against them. We saw some of that with Brexit. Now, I worked with civil servants for 3.5 years. Most of them were great, actually, and I liked a lot of them very much. Some of them are still friends of mine, and they did what we basically wanted them to do. But certainly on Brexit, there were so many times when so many of our ministers, certainly Jake Berry was one of the ministers I worked with, felt like a bit of pushback as well. So certainly that's an issue. But if they have those kind of, they call them access talks, they usually have them before an election. I mean, you think they should have them even now because they are so far ahead in the polls, Andy?
I want to see
and hear about planning for what reform are going to do, because the reality is reform will end up, if we believe the polling, to get in with quite a majority.
Yeah.
So therefore the public are going to be thinking, great, off we go, we can have these policies. But they are going to be dealing with what I believe now, the civil service is a left-wing political movement, and also the unions that are within it are highly sympathisers towards the left. And I do not believe that there will be any cooperation whatsoever. And what I don't want to hear from reform is I don't want to hear the sweeping sort of comments that you might get from the likes of Sarah Potion, what's his name, Lee Anderson, Richard Tice,
yeah.
even the likes of Nigel Farage. Well, we're just going to sack them all, because that is pie in the
Yeah,
sky.
no, it's you need civil servants to get things. You need civil servants to do what you have a mandate to do. Andy, it's a really interesting call. Thank you for it. I appreciate that. That's Andy in Merseyside there. Let's hear a voice note. Paul has sent this one in on prisons, this big story about this migrant sex offender on the loose. This is what Paul has to say.
The reason why ex-military will not join the prison service is because simply it doesn't pay enough. We've already put ourselves in harm's way and gone out of our way to help Queen and Country, now King and Country, and you expect us to do it for what the guys in the prisons get paid, which is absolutely rubbish. Thank you. Brilliant show as always.
Thank you, Paul. That is a very reasonable point. And look, I think there have been major problems with prison officer recruitment. There are loads of people, I've spoken to people I know from my own time in the Ministry of Justice, that so many prison officers were pensioned off, they were leaving the service, they brought in new people, and often, you know, that level of experience is incredibly important. I've watched loads of documentaries, I've been in loads of prisons as well. I've been in Belmarsh, I've been in Highdown, I've been in a prison in America. There are loads of times when there are very inexperienced officers, very young people, who are making huge decisions about restraining people, you know, legal implications, dealing with very dangerous people. Some of our prison officers are really good people, and some of them are not. Some of them are corrupt, some of them are lazy, some of them don't do the job they're supposed to do. It is a really big problem, and often there were people with a lot of experience who were let go because they were too expensive, and often that is a huge mistake. Certainly it was in the prison service in the last few years. It happened under the Conservatives, and here are the problems we have today. But I think it's a really good idea to talk about the prison service more generally, whilst never losing sight of the fact that this was a catastrophic error. This guy's still on the loose, and we're going to hopefully hear very soon that he is back behind bars. Thank you to Vincent from Dartford, who says, I suggest that when reform get in, we have a quick referendum with questions attached such as do you want to leave the ECHR, etc., showing it is the will of the people, and that shuts the door to other parties. Dawn says the information coming out is why that asylum seeker prisoner was wearing his prison uniform. It's just another grey tracksuit. There's no different to hundreds of other people out there. Maybe it would help the public in these cases if there was an HMP somewhere, or other arrows going down the trousers like in the cartoons, and or bright orange jumpsuits like in America. No wonder these escapees can just disappear. Brad in Cambridge says the return of Lucy Powell is a clear indicator of how out of control Starmer is of his own party. Every time he gets rid of someone from the far left, such as Diane Abbott, Angela Rayner and Powell, the Marxist left slips them in again, says Brad. Jane says, didn't Lucy Powell only apologise when so many called her out? She apologised to save her job at the time. Many don't rate her as a politician at all. Didn't she wear some sort of t-shirt with something written on it she has to justify? Vague memory of that. I can't quite remember what that is. Andy in Thatcham says, what a finale to a disastrous week for the government. They've elected the woman who called the rape of young girls dog whistling. Well, she's called the inquiry, certainly. You couldn't write it. A migrant returns from France. Rape gang inquiry collapses. Proof Starmer lied to Parliament over the China court case. Labour support collapses in Wales. And now the sex offender from Epping has been released from jail. I wonder if tomorrow can add to this week's tally of disastrous episodes, says Andy in Thatcham. Well, plenty to discuss, certainly between now and 1 o'clock. But also, Wes Streeting is going to be with us tomorrow, the Health Secretary. My show is between 10 and 1 on a Sunday. I hope you can join me for that. We'll also be speaking to Chris Philp, the Home Secretary, the Shadow Home Secretary. So Shadow Home Secretary and the Health Secretary on tomorrow. Loads to discuss with them and loads to discuss with you between now and 1 o'clock. Get your call in, 0344 499 1000. We're going to speak to Sarah White in just a second. She's an Epping Forest resident, mum and campaigner. What on earth does she make of this catastrophic error, letting the sex offender migrant, a previous resident of the Bell Hotel, out of prison? We'll talk to her in just a second. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thanks to everybody who's been in touch, including Mandy. He says, good afternoon, Peter. I have to say I'm disappointed with you. A few points. He's not on the run. He was released legitimately as far as he was concerned, it appears. I mean, he is basically, I don't think I said on the run, maybe I did. He's out anyway and he shouldn't be. They made a mistake and he should be back in. Mandy also says, did he have an interpretation service at his trial? If yes, were they there yesterday? If not, why not? Would he know what was going on? Well, I mean, many people in Ethiopia speak English. Maybe he does as well. I don't know. You assume he knew those men he was speaking to. Did he? Looks as if he was asking for directions to me. Well, we don't know. I hope when police find him, it's not all guns blazing. Yes, he should be arrested, but be mindful he doesn't know he is wanted, as he was allowed to walk out as far as he was concerned. As far as he was concerned, a free man. I want to report it soon, but let's admit that it wasn't him. It just walked out. He was allowed to. Yeah, Mandy, very happy to take that on the chin. Some of those points are perfectly legitimate. Some I think perhaps less so. But yeah, I mean, look, if he has any access to the news, or even walks past a shop where there's a TV on, or he's in buying some food and there's a TV on the corner in a shop somewhere, a fish and chip shop or whatever, well, you know, he'll know that he's wanted. So who is to blame for the migrant sex offender escape? Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Well, Labour's new deputy leader, Lucy Powell, she says the blunder which saw Hadush Kabatu released was a big mistake. Yes, Lucy, I think we know that. She told broadcasters this is an operational matter, and I'm sure the Ministry of Justice will be making their comments on that soon. Well, I mean, David Lammy already spoke about it, but anyway. But it's obviously a big mistake, and we need to find him quickly and make sure that he's deported. That's what we'll be determined to do. Well, that really added, I think, to the sum of the conversation. Yes, he should be found. I think that's all pretty obvious. Let's go now to Essex. Sarah White is an Epping Forest resident, a mum and campaigner. And Sarah, I know that there will be many people very, very worried that this scumbag is on the loose. Just tell us how your thoughts have developed really in the last 24 hours as the news has emerged.
Well, first of all, hi Peter, how
Hello.
are you?
How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Totally outraged, to be honest. And I think we all need to take a moment and think about how the family feel of the young girl that was sexually assaulted.
Yeah.
Because they have been let down at every single turn. First of all, by the councillors in Epping being incompetent of stopping this hotel from being there in the first place. And then from the failings of the police and the judge that handed such a little sentence. We all knew he would be out within 4 months. And for your last comment from a woman called Mandy to say that he was just let go, he knew he was being deported. So yes, he is on the run. He knows the consequences of the crimes that he committed. So as far as I'm concerned, he's a criminal on the loose.
Oh yeah, I believe that too. And Sarah, there must just be such a dreadful atmosphere where you are as well. We know he's not in that area anymore. He's gone to London. But I mean, there must have been people yesterday who were really in fear, as well as the fact that, I mean, I had a sexual abuse victim contact me yesterday and say, like, you always look over your shoulder as a sexual abuse victim. You always worry about what has happened. And as you say, the 14-year-old girl who he assaulted and the other people affected by this will be really, really worried about the fact he's on the loose, and that will re-traumatise them, won't it, Sarah?
Oh, definitely. It's like they're constantly having to relive their moments all over again, which is totally unfair. And somebody or some people need to be held accountable, because at the end of the day, you don't accidentally let somebody go. And I thought it wasn't that common. However, I found out that 262 people were accidentally released last year alone. That's every single day of the week, because weekends they do not release people. So we know Monday to Friday, at least one person was released.
Yeah, it's interesting, the Metropolitan Police now taking over this investigation, because we know, of course, it was Essex Police previously, now is in London. It would make sense the Met Police involved, David Lammy talking about the British Transport Police and so on. But for the people who have been raising the alarm, talking about the Bell Hotel for so long, saying that these people shouldn't be in the area or shouldn't be in hotels anyway, certainly unvetted migrants, it just must feel like a slap in the face from the authorities, Sarah.
It really is, and we just feel completely let down, because, you know, it doesn't seem to matter how many of us campaign, how many of us stand there week in, week out. There was another flash protest last night, and it just looks like we're not heard at all. No one really cares about us. And at the end of the day, this government is failing everybody in this country, and this just shows it. I mean, if they can arrest you for doing some hurty words online, they can quickly find you then, but they can't find this guy. I mean, at what point was the alarm raised that he was actually walking the streets? He's a sexual predator at the end of the day. And what is he capable of? It was a sexual assault last time. What is he capable of doing? He has no respect for women or children, and I fear for people in our country.
We have a breaking line here. The Metropolitan Police has said it's taken over the manhunt for Hadush Kabatu. In a statement, Commander James Conway has confirmed Kabatu got off the London-bound train at Stratford Station. That's in East London. We're examining CCTV from that area and further afield, including on the transport network, to establish information about his subsequent movements, he said. I mean, how much faith do you have in the police, Sarah, that he will be found soon? It's been nearly 24 hours that he's been on the loose.
I have very little faith in their police as it goes anyway, and I just think that it will be down to the community to find where he is and, you know, hopefully turn him over, and then he can be deported. But the problem is, it isn't just him. There are a lot of these men that have broken into the country illegally. They're undocumented, and our government needs to start putting as a priority the people that are in this country. We want every single one of these men detained, processed and deported, and that's the end of it at the end of the day. We should come first, the people that are born and bred here, not people that have broken into this country and committed a crime, because that is a crime at the end of the day. They should be in detention centres, not allowed to roam freely. We don't know who they are. They could be criminals, they might not be. I'm not saying that all of them are. However, there is a high percentage that are, and, you know, they do go on to commit crimes like sexual assault, rape or murder. And quite frankly, we have enough of our own people in this country who we have to deal with that are filling up our prison system. And the other day, they said that they was going to start releasing people that early from their sentences. If you're sent to prison, you should...
Yeah, no, that's happening already, Sarah, and it's a real cause for concern. Listen, thank you for speaking to me today. I really appreciate it. That's Sarah White there, who's an Epping Forest resident, a mum and a campaigner, joining us here on Talk. So thank you to Sarah. Dave's been in touch and says nobody has mentioned the possibility of an inside job and corruption regarding the escapee, says Dave in Dorset. Dave, I have mentioned it a number of times this morning and on Drive yesterday. Clean out your ears, mate. But yes, it could be a corruption, certainly, and it'll be very interesting to see what is happening there and what happens with that investigation. Peter says outsource prisons to other countries, save money and also act as a deterrent. Phil in Hertfordshire is on the line and has given me a ring at 0344 499 1000. Phil, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good afternoon, Peter. Good afternoon. Okay, so regarding this fugitive that's on the loose.
Yep.
Put out a reward for him. Circle that information through the migrant community. They will snap it up. They have no loyalties. They'll find him. They want that money.
I think there's probably quite a few people in this country as well who would quite like it. Oh, I'm hearing a bit of an echo there, Phil. But I'm sure there are plenty of people as well who would dob him in. I would certainly I'd dob him in for free if I saw him on the street. I'd alert the police immediately.
Well, exactly. But, you know, what
the police have got to do something, and they need to show the public that they actually mean business and they're serious about what they're doing.
Thank you for your thoughts there, Phil. That's Phil in Hertfordshire. Stuart in Tunbridge Wells has sent me a text, 87222, with the word talk in his text. Lucy Powell said there would have been a run on the pound if Rachel Reeves had not cut the winter fuel allowance. Don't expect any current policies to appear anytime soon. Afternoon, Peter, says another person saying, heard a text asking why was the prisoner let go by mistake? Why was he not tagged? When you're let go from prison and have to be tagged, the team come to your home about 48 hours later to put the tag on. It's not instant, says John in Liverpool. That sounds utterly plausible, but also really stupid. Stephen says, David Lammy, specialist subject, being competent in government. Time starts now. You've scored 0 point. The exit is over there. If you haven't seen David Lammy on Mastermind, I know I say this quite often, but if you haven't seen David Lammy on Celebrity Mastermind, at 1 o'clock, when this programme ends, go on YouTube, put in David Lammy Celebrity Mastermind. You will not be disappointed. Lots more to discuss in the last 20 minutes of the programme. Give us your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
I think rather than just pick one person, there might be some new law or rule to do with letters patent that's brought in. For example, if you're not working as a member of the royal family, you don't have them. There could be something they could be working on behind the scenes, which could therefore see, even if you've not found guilt or anything, it could just be the way forward. Because remember, William wants to make the royal family smaller, and I think he would be behind something like that, definitely, of making the royal family not only smaller, but also limiting who can call themselves HRH.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lucy in Cornwall's been in touch, and she says, it was good to hear Sarah Pochin speaking. I too have written to Reform UK to ask that my membership is not renewed in February due to not confirming that Reform UK will not be banning halal slaughter if they come to power, says Lucy. That's interesting. That's a couple of people. Ian in Wimbledon says, morning Peter, as a black guy and a Reform supporter, I also believe minorities are overrepresented on TV, but I think Sarah Pochin needs to articulate these facts a little better. It didn't sound too good in Ian's view, Ian in Wimbledon there, so thank you for that. Hev says, the lady who said she doesn't support reform anymore because of animal cruelty issues makes me angry. I agree with her issues as far as animals go, but there are far more positives than negatives for supporting reform. No one can agree with every issue any party comes out with. It's about the percentage of pros and cons. I will still support reform, even though animal issues do worry me. Hev, I know exactly what you mean, and listen, you know, there's no political party that totally aligns with probably most of us. I mean, there will be some who really feel really strongly and feel that there are political parties that align with all their values. But even, you know, I worked in government for 3.5 years. I was in the Conservative Party for those times as well. I mean, it certainly didn't align with all my values, but I had to get on with it, and sometimes occasionally had to sell things to the press, as was my job, that you know, I wouldn't have chosen that policy, for example. So it is a compromise. It's voting for sort of the least worst option or the one you most agree with. But in fairness to those people who have decided to leave reform or believe it's a big issue for them, well, if that's your number one issue, that's your number one issue. And you know, people have the right to do that. And I know what you mean, Hev, I get that. But and I get your strength of feeling as well, and that it's actually weighing up the pros and the cons. So it's a really interesting message, and thank you for it. Paul in Fife says, how much control does a Prime Minister have over a Mayor of London when both are in the same political party? Khan has repeatedly denied the existence of Pakistani rape gangs in London, yet the Met are now to investigate 9,000 cases of rape in young white girls in London. Well, Starmer actor has zero control of Khan. I'm not sure Khan said they didn't exist, but he certainly minimised it. Leslie says, so now we have to go online to access the NHS. What has the NHS spent billions Labour gave them on? Well, talking to the Health Secretary tomorrow, Wes Streeting will be with us. Daryl in Blackburn says, Lammy is furious and the dangerous offender needs deporting. This off a man, along with the PM and all the front bench, signed numerous letters and campaigns to keep dangerous offenders in the country, including sex offenders. Now we're meant to believe his outrage. Robert in Stockport, the illegal migrant, could be walking around London freely with impunity. All he has to do is wear a burqa. It's all been done before when someone wanted by the police managed to leave the country. And just on the matter of migration, I want to speak to Dan in Liverpool, who's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Dan, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hello, Peter. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
I think me and you spoke before, and you heard from me saying that I come from a mixed race background. My father's side comes from Iran, my mother's side British Christian. And my father's side, we had had enough of this. The people I talked to, from people of my culture and stuff like that, I heard one of my fellow neighbours saying the way this government is going, he would actually vote for Nick Griffin if it meant fixing it. And that's how angry we are. That is how angry we are. Because people like David Lammy, Keir Starmer, and they want to keep saying we've inherited this. Just because you get something doesn't mean you have to keep blaming.
Well, exactly, and we're 16 months on. I mean, when do you think is a reasonable time to say, Labour, hold on a second, you've been in power for a while, we're going to hold you responsible for what's happening now?
No one wants to pretend anyone's perfect. Everyone knows there's a few touch points, but stop making an excuse and let your actions speak for you. I'm really trying to hold my emotions because I am really angry. And when they want to say they speak for a working class, I ask really, go to a working class building site and ask every single man, what do they think should happen to any of these illegal migrants? I'm not saying anything, but when is the penny going to drop? And I don't want anyone getting hurt, but how far can we push the British public before something snaps? Peter Cardwell has said this plenty of times. We are living on a knife edge right now, and I am really worried for my family side and the good people who are going to get caught up in this.
I think you echo Dan, I think you echo the sentiments of so many people there. Thank you for your call. Frank's in London and has given me a ring, 0344 499 1000. Frank, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Yeah, what I would like to say is, I mean, this guy being released by mistake from prison, you know, something is a bit off. I mean, look,
this guy was a very, very, I mean, his whole arrest and jailed was known by everyone, okay? So in the prison system, someone like that, they would have a note against his name. So I just find it very strange, and how convenient that, you know, with that whole Andrew thing on our sort of, on our, on the newspapers and on our screens, all of a sudden it's gone off because they've replaced that with this guy, which really, when you look at it carefully, look, yes, he was, I mean, jailed for assault, but, you know, I mean, is he the most dangerous guy?
Well, he's a dangerous guy. He's been put in for a sexual assault. But do you think there's more to this, Frank? There's more we're not being told?
Absolutely, because it's all, I truly believe it was all set up to do it, to really take front page news. Because look, I mean, I have an uncle who works in the prison system. Any prisoner that comes in, with, you know, especially someone like that man whose, you know, crimes and his whole case was publicized, would have a special, would have a note against his name.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so it's absolutely, I mean, it's ridiculous. Now, I mean, I'm looking at it, they cannot seriously believe that the public is so dumb.
Well, Frank, we'll see what's happened. There's going to be a full inquiry into all that happened. I'm sure lessons will be learned. They always are. But as you say, you know, there's clearly a lot we don't know about this. There's clearly a lot the authorities don't know. For example, where he is. And actually, the Metropolitan Police in the last sort of half an hour or so has taken over the manhunt, or confirmed they've taken over the manhunt for Hadush Kabatu, the Ethiopian who is on the loose, the migrant who is a sex offender who was released in error. In a statement, the Commander James Conway informs Kabatu got off the London-bound train at Stratford Station in East London. We're examining CCTV from that area and further afield, says James Conway, the Commander, including on the transport network, to establish information about his subsequent movements. And David Lammy, late last night, he's the Justice Secretary, he's been talking about this. He's pretty angry too, but it has happened under his watch. This is what David Lammy has said.
Let us be clear. We inherited a collapsing prison system in which the last government was releasing people early and which our prisons were overflowing. And indeed, we have a sentencing bill in Parliament seeking to address that issue, and we have stabilised the system. But that can be no excuse for wrongly releasing an individual, a dangerous individual, into the community. And that's why Essex Police, the Metropolitan Police and the British Transport Police are conducting a manhunt tonight to find this individual and ensure that he is in custody or indeed returned to Ethiopia where he belongs.
Thank you to everyone who has got in touch. Annie says, hi Peter, great show. The disappearance of Hadush Kabatu. This man could cover himself in a burqa or a niqab and dissolve into the crowd. While there are no rules restricting these garments, this is a very real problem for us, which will only get worse, says Annie in Devon. Layla says, Martine from Dorset says, reform's dismissal of the halal and kosher form of slaughter will definitely lose them votes. They need to address this issue. I just wonder if it's anything to do with Zia Yusuf or Leila Cunningham. Well, I mean, Zia Yusuf is the head of policy, I suppose, but Sarah Pochin seems to agree with Nigel Farage. Martin says, another great show as usual. Thank you, Martin. My questions are, who took the video of this scumbag? They knew who he was, so why didn't they follow him up and keep Plod updated on his location? Maybe they did. John says, just a quick text to say, when the team come to homes to tag prisoners, it's so they have a perimeter for the house arrest, says John Liverpool. Okay, that makes sense, yeah. Mike says, if halal is banned, it will go underground. That will be the worst of two evils. Brad in Cambridge, you know I am deeply concerned about animal welfare. I'm a Reform member too. If these people are leaving Reform over the issue, who are they going to vote for? Who else was banning halal in their manifesto? Another person says that the caller who mentioned tagged prisoners get tagged within a day or two at their homes. Prisoners have to have a registered address to be released to, especially sex offenders. Let's speak to Paul in Hartlepool, who's been in touch on this. Paul's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Paul, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi, Peter. What I'd like to say, it's a bit of a kill two birds with one stone. Contract everybody that gets 5 years and over, contract them out to another country.
All of them, even British people.
Yeah,
Okay, all right. Okay.
The chock-a block was at the, and also everybody that comes across the water, right? Have a little tell Simon, have a little word with his mate Macron, and say, look, we want you to jail these people for 6 months in France. We'll pay for them. We'll pay for them.
Okay.
And that would be a massive deterrent.
Yeah. It's one idea, Paul. Listen, thank you for it. I appreciate it. Marcus is in Liverpool. Last caller of the day, Marcus. What would you like to say? You're very welcome to the programme.
Yeah, I just wonder if there's a deeper picture to this release thing and that the systems got hacked for them, because I'm presuming they would get like a computerised thing saying,
yeah,
this
Marcus, are you there?
Been released.
Yeah. I think that's one option, definitely, and certainly because it really struck me.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead, Marcus. Are you there? I think he's dropped off the line. It really struck me yesterday. Marcus makes a really good point about hacking, because it struck me yesterday, there's 7 points, there's 7 different points, I think I counted anyway, Vanessa Frake, who's a former prison governor, was talking us through in terms of what happens when a prisoner is released from prison, and all the different checks, including at governor level. Vanessa's a former governor. Who makes the decision and why that person gets released. Clearly something catastrophic went wrong here. I hope the next time I speak to you, which will be tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, this scumbag will be back behind bars where he belongs. The police certainly are looking for him at the moment in London. Stratford is the last place they seem to